crosswalk, the sky split open and a dark, twisted lump pushed through, spilling purple light. People on the street froze mid-step, staring up as the air itself seemed to crack. A young woman clutched her mouth, shaking, while the man beside her stared wide-eyed at the sky, phone limp in his hand. No one knew what it was, only that it had appeared out of nowhere and turned the street into a nightmare. The crowd finally moved, breaking into a wild rush as everyone tried to get away. In the scramble, a woman stumbled and hit the ground, curling up while strangers sprinted past her. She looked up with wide, shaking eyes as a hulking green brute loomed over her. The monster lifted its massive axe high, ready to bring it down on someone who could not even stand. Before the axe could fall, a line of sharp impact marks ripped across the crosswalk, as if something heavy and fast had just slammed down again and again. An armored hunter burst forward with a sweeping strike, his blade wrapped in bright blue energy. The swing tore straight through the monster, ending the threat in a single clean motion. The woman slowly rose, staring at the fading glow in the air with tears in her eyes. Where there had been only terror a moment ago, she now felt a strange, shaky sense of hope. All around her, more fighters in strange gear rushed into battle, hurling arrows, blades, and blazing skills at the monsters pouring out. These were the ones people would soon call hunters, the new shield standing between humans and the rifts. When the monster collapsed, a bright golden shard floated up from its body and settled into the hunter's hand. These strange resources, born whenever a beast was taken down, soon became the fuel that pushed humanity forward. United under blazing power, hunters from every path stood together with their weapons raised, a fiery spirit roaring at their backs. From that point on, the age of hunters began, and the world itself started to change around them. Not long after, the chaos of monsters and hunters turned into paperwork and waiting lines, with people quietly sitting at desks to register their new powers and file complaints. The clerk frowned at his form, admitting she had never even seen a labor class before and clearly not sure what to do with someone ranked that low. As she typed his details into the system, the clerk asked carefully if he had gained any skills or traits at all, almost hoping the form was wrong. Ujiha answered that he had nothing, forcing a small, calm smile like he was already used to saying it out loud. Standing outside afterward, Jiha scratched the back of his head and let out an awkward laugh, pretending it did not bother him that even the staff pitied his class. Above the busy streets of Seoul, the tower shone under a clear sky, hiding how much the city now relied on hunters just to stay standing. In Sector 7, a small sign shaped like a potion bottle swung over a narrow balcony, marking a quiet hunter store tucked between taller buildings. A hunter and a young girl stepped through the wooden door, glancing around with the easy look of regulars who knew this place kept them supplied. Behind the counter, Ujiha welcomed them with a gentle smile, his golden eyes calm as he rested one hand on a thick, worn bundle on the desk. The hunter said they were here for potions, and the girl eagerly pointed toward the shelves while Jiha quickly shifted into shopkeeper mode, ready to fill their order. The girl leaned over the counter, grinning as she asked if he was that labor class guy, while Jiha froze with sweat running down his cheek. The girl kept going, asking if it was true he had no skills and how he even hunted, while the hunter beside her frowned and told her to cut it out. The hunter apologized, saying the girl could not read the mood, but Jiha just smiled and said it was fine as he set their basket of bright red potions on the counter. While he rang up the potions, Jiha calmly explained that the girl was not wrong, that without any special skill he stayed in the back of raids and just gathered resources. The girl tilted her head and said she understood now, sounding more curious than rude. Out on the street, the hunter grumbled that she should not have asked something like that and told her to stop wasting time. But she hugged her potion and said there was nothing wrong with wanting to know. Not far away, a tank and an ambulance sped down the road, sirens and engines cutting through the quiet shopping district. Pressed to the window, the hunter said a rank 3 dungeon must have opened if they were rolling out tanks and ambulances, and the girl admitted she wanted to try going into a place like that someday. The hunter told her to get real, saying their skills were nowhere near enough for that kind of dungeon and that her way of talking was starting to annoy him, while Jiha watched them from behind the counter in silence. Hearing them chat about a rank 3 dungeon, Ujiha's smile faded a little as he thought about how far someone like him was supposed to stay from that kind of fight. Jiha bowed deeply at the door, sending the pair off with a warm thanks while they headed down the stairs still wrapped up in their own talk. Leaning on the railing, Jiha stared toward the road and quietly admitted to himself that rank 3 dungeons must be full of resources. Yet no one would ever call a laborer like him for something that serious. He thought back over the 5 years since he awakened, staring at the glowing window that still mocked him with the same old title. Class, laborer, with nothing special written under skills or traits. With no skills to lean on, Jiha never even tried to join the front lines, instead waiting until companies and guilds cleared a dungeon before slipping in to gather whatever junk they left behind and selling it off. Work no one cared about, but just enough to keep his tiny business and his quiet life going. Still, that side job paid for the one thing he truly loved, letting Ujiha lose himself in old, dusty books while the rest of the world chased glory. He flipped through the thick pages of his newest find, the worn book feeling heavier and stranger than anything else on his shelves. The shop was empty and still, so the store owner hunched over the counter with the book open, letting the rows of potion bottles fade into the background as he tried to focus on the tiny letters. After a while, he rubbed his cheek and jaw, feeling the strain of staring at the cramped writing that refused to make sense. Propping his head on his hand, Jiha wondered if the text was just too hard for him, his eyelids growing heavier with every line he tried to read. His vision blurred, and his golden eyes slowly closed as he mumbled to himself how sleepy he was, letting his body sink toward the open book. Ujiha's head dropped onto the open pages, his arm sliding across the counter as he finally passed out on top of the strange book. Bright green light burst from the picture of the tree and curled around Jiha's body, as if the book itself was trying to pull him inside. When the light faded, Jiha lay on cool grass under tall trees, a lone leaf drifting down to tap his forehead. He jolted upright, heart racing, as the soft forest light and damp earth finally hit him. Jiha stared around with wide eyes, trying to figure out how he had gone from his dusty shop to this bright forest. Standing in the middle of endless trees and drifting mist, he realized he had no idea where he was or how far this place stretched. Jiha pinched his cheek hard and flinched at the sting, deciding this was no dream and that the only way to make sense of it was to call up his status window. The system window popped up, calmly listing Jiha as a laborer with the same low stats and a couple of decent resistances, but nothing that explained this forest or made him feel any less average. Lowering the window, Jiha frowned, noticing that for such a lush place, the air felt strangely still. He realized he couldn't hear a single bird or insect, and the fog around the trunks was so thick that anything could be hiding just a few steps away. Jiha walks up to a patch of twisted twigs, each holding a swollen yellow bud that looks half broken. He leans in, puzzled, trying to remember if he has ever seen fruit shaped like this and coming up blank. As he focuses on one bud, a system window pops up and names it Ether Herb LV, one saying it makes every skill free to cast for 10 whole seconds. Jiha stares at the glowing text, struggling to believe a simple plant could have a cheat like that. He brushes the bud with his fingers, mind racing as he repeats the effect in his head, 0 ether cost for 10 seconds. The more he thinks about it, the more he realizes this little herb could flip every fight in the world. His mind, he pictures a hunter pouring ether into skill, blue power roaring around them like a storm, knowing that without that fuel no ability can even start. Stronger skills burn through more of it, which is why everyone guards their ether so carefully. Thinking about that, Jiha looks at the herb again, now fully aware that this tiny plant holds a power every hunter would go crazy for. The worker studies the bud with a greedy sort of hope, already picturing it turned into some kind of potion. Then he remembers he came here with empty hands and no bottles, and the thought of leaving such value behind makes him click his tongue in regret. Instead of walking away, Jiha crouches by a trickle of water and gathers it in his cupped hands, gently letting it run over a thin, tired-looking branch beside him. He notices a lone bright leaf clinging to a cracked branch on a wrecked tree, the only bit of green on dead wood. The sight bothers him, like that small life could fade at any moment if no one helps it. The worker's expression softens as he makes up his mind to give the little branch a hand, even if it is just a small favor. Jiha kneels by the trunk and lets the water spill from his hands over the thin branch, soaking the soil and leaves as if he were watering a plant back home. After a short while he stands and wipes his forehead, clothes smudged with dirt but a light smile on his face. Jiha eyes the damp branch and quietly hopes the water he gave it will be enough for it to hang on. A bright window pops up in front of Jiha, telling him he has gained a new skill called plant amiability, something that lets him get along better with plants. Before he can even process that, another window appears, saying he has also gained a strange blessing skill tied to the old tree. The worker stares as the windows update again, now saying plant amiability and the blessing have become traits as well. He counts them with his finger, stunned that after 5 dry years he suddenly has both a new skill and a new trait just from helping it. The old tree suddenly flares with golden light, its trunk and roots shining like lightning racing through wood. Jiha looks up, mouth slightly open, as the blinding light from the tree washes over him and turns the whole forest into a glowing haze. Standing alone before the trunk, Jiha watches in alarm as the blazing light eats away at the tree's shape, like the whole thing is slowly disappearing into thin air. In a blink the light is gone, and Jiha jerks upright behind his shop counter, heart racing as he realizes the forest and the giant tree have vanished. He looks around at the shelves, the register, the worn floor of his small store and slowly accepts that he is back in the real world. Rubbing at his eyes, Jiha lets out a slow breath and mutters to himself that it must have been a dream, even though every part of it felt too real to brush off. As he pushes his glasses up, Jiha's eyes sharpen, a quiet thought forming that what happened with that old tree might not be just some random dream after all. Jiha stares at the dirt on his hands and clothes, frozen. The worker slowly understands that if the grime followed him back, then that glowing forest was not just a dream. On the counter, the old book bursts with warm golden light, the picture of the great tree shining like it is alive. This strange thing in his dusty shop is clearly the key that connects his world to that hidden forest. Jiha stares at the grime on his hands, feeling a chill as he realizes the dirt from that place followed him back here. His mind jumps to a wild thought. If he falls asleep again, maybe he can return to that forest. Back in the shop, Jiha grips his fist and decides he has to try it, no matter how crazy it sounds. Light swirls around him, and in an instant Jiha is standing among the trees again, shocked that his plan actually worked. As he looks around, Jiha notices the fog has thinned and the forest feels wider, with new golden shoots rising from the ground. Kneeling to study a glowing branch, the veteran junk picker in him kicks in, and his eyes sharpen as he senses this plant is something special. A bright golden apple hangs from the branch as the system names it a solar apple, explaining that mixing it with a health potion boosts the healing by 20%, though the effect ends a bit faster. Jiha reaches out in awe, thinking how even high-ranked dungeons almost never have this kind of fruit, and how crazy it is that it can push a basic potion's healing so much higher. He remembers tired hunters clutching their red health potions, knowing those drinks are everywhere yet only restore a small slice of their life over time. Nothing like the sudden jump this fruit could give. Then Jiha tilts his head back and freezes, seeing not just one solar apple but a whole forest of them hanging over his head. each one a tiny fortune waiting to be picked. Jiha studies the shining apples overhead and thinks that, if he mixes them with ether herb liquid, he could brew a potion with insane power. Then he starts wondering if he can sneak a few out by stuffing them under his clothes. Before he can test anything, something drops from the sky and slams right into his face, leaving him stunned and muffled. He yanks the thing off his head, sees it as a worn brown bag, and the system calmly names it a dimensional pouch. The shopkeeper wonders if this dimensional pouch will let him carry things from the forest back to his general store, and he blinks when he finds a couple of empty bottles already waiting inside. Jiha lets out an awkward laugh, thinking how he had just been worrying about storage when this pouch literally fell on him, and the timing feels so perfect that it is a bit scary. With the pouch in hand and the trees heavy with fruit, Jiha decides he has everything he needs and plans to see if the forest goods can really leave with him. And the next day, a big hunter-only chain store in Seoul is already buzzing with trouble. Outside the hunting ground shop, hunters pack against the doors, the whole place loud and restless before a big raid. Inside, an armored hunter slams the counter when the clerk admits they are out of paralysis resistance potions. And while the staff beg him to wait and rush to call other stores, they keep hearing the same answer and panic because their team has to enter a dungeon in just half an hour. One of the clerks pales when he hears that the angry customer is Seo Hyojin, the famed sword witch, knowing the shortage just turned into a real problem. Seo Hyojin, wrapped in sharp armor and a flowing red cape, walks up to the counter and calmly tells the staff to bring out their manager. Hunters around the store stare as Seo Hyojin stands in the middle, her rare armor and cape shining like she walked out of a top-tier dungeon. Whispers spread that a rank 12 hunter with artifacts from deep raids has shown up in person, and everyone suddenly understands why the staff are sweating. Seo Hyojin keeps a straight face as a clerk calls her name in a shaky voice, acting like this crowded shop is just another stop on her way to battle. The store manager hurries over with a forced smile, saying he never thought someone like her would visit in person. Seo Hyojin coolly explains that they kept dodging her calls, then asks if the special potion they promised her yesterday has arrived or not. When the manager stammers that her order is still being made and asks her to wait, Seo Hyojin's eyes widen in disbelief. She tells him she has to be ready to enter the dungeon in 30 minutes, so waiting around here is not an option. Someone quickly pulls up a map on their phone, checking every nearby general store that might still have the ingredients she needs. Far away in his quiet shop, Jiha calmly lifts a round flask filled with a warm golden liquid, the glow hinting that this is no ordinary potion. Jiha studies the flask and runs through the recipe in his head, making sure the purified water, Undine's tears, and ether herb liquid have all been poured in with nothing wasted. He adds a measure of solar apple concentrate into the device, and as the liquid runs through the coil, bright energy whirls around the waiting flask like the potion is waking up. Golden light bursts out as the system declares his work a great success, crediting some strange blessing. New windows pop up, telling Jiha he has gained alchemy as a real skill, and that this special potion lets him use any skill for a short time with no ether cost while slowly restoring his health, leaving him staring in shock. Jiha slowly swirls the glowing liquid and wonders what kind of blessing could twist the effect this far. He then starts worrying if he should even put something this unreal on the market, since no one would believe a potion that erases ether costs and heals you at the same time, and he has no idea what price could ever fit it. Jiha looks up from the counter as Seo Hyojin strides through the door, armor clinking and cloak swinging like she sprinted here. He puts on his best store owner smile and sets the glowing flask on the counter, asking how he can help her. Seo Hyojin slams both hands on the counter and demands any potion he has, blurting that she is out of time. Her eyes lock onto the golden liquid, pupils tightening as she measures its power in a single glance. Jiha stiffens when she calls it a health potion, agreeing but starting to say it is not something he planned to sell yet. When she presses him about the exact effects, Jiha starts to say it is not for sale, but she simply apologizes for rushing, snatches the flask, and says she will take it anyway. Seo Hyojin tosses a thick stack of bills on the counter, tells him her guild can cover any difference, then turns away with the potion while Jiha stammers and reaches out to stop her. By the time he blinks, she is already gone, and Jiha mutters that it should be fine while clearly not sure at all. Outside, under a clear blue sky, birds glide over the trees as the world moves on toward the coming fight. Deep in the forest, Seo Hyojin charges forward with a magic circle blazing behind her, 3 flying swords crashing down in a bright wave that tears through the monster ahead. Seo Hyojin storms through the forest, her flying blades dropping from the sky and pinning the beasts before they can even touch her. She barely slows down, already racing toward whatever waits ahead. Behind her, the huge mole monsters lie still with glowing swords jutting from their backs, clearing a neat road through the trees. Seo Hyojin keeps running without looking back, as if this level of power is just routine. 2 porters stare at the fallen monsters and admit that with a rank 12 hunter around, there is basically nothing left for them to handle. One enjoys how easy the job feels, while the other worries they will never improve if they keep relying on her like this. The older porter crouches by a carcass and starts carving, telling his partner to forget about joining the fight and just focus on collecting materials like they were told. The younger one nods, realizing their job is to stay out of the sword witch's way. While he works, the senior porter says Hyojin was once the type to call everyone into the fight, but something bad happened, and she has gone full solo ever since. He tells the newbie not to take it personally and just respect the way she chooses to move now. He glances at the younger man and adds that, as a newcomer, he probably has no idea what happened to make her that way. He begins to bring up the incident that everyone else in the guild still remembers. Seo Hyojin suddenly bursts from the trees, face tight, and orders everyone to run. The porters start to ask why she is panicking, but their words die as they spot something behind her that makes their blood run cold. Towering over Seo Hyojin, a hulking manstalker rises from a cloud of purple poison, its claws dripping with toxic mist. The system marks it as an aversion-level monster, the size of an armored car and infamous for using extreme poison that even top hunters fear. The porters shake as they recognize the monster's name, stammering that a creature like that should only show up in Grade 4 dungeons. With that thought, they both feel like their chances of getting out of here alive just drop to almost nothing. Seo Hyojin hurls herself toward the manstalker, magic circles spinning and swords whipping around her like a storm. As she attacks, she snaps at the stunned porters again to get moving, making it clear she will hold this thing off alone if she has to. Seo Hyojin slams her heel into the ground, blue power bursting out as she kicks off toward the monster. She charges straight under the manstalker's jaws, blades spinning around her like a storm as she forces it to focus only on her. Hyojin leaps high and brings her glowing sword down, a blast of blue power crashing into the manstalker's raised arm. The manstalker roars and twists, purple energy flaring as it bats her away. Hyojin is flung through the trees and slams into the ground, a pained groan forced from her lungs. Facing the towering manstalker again, Hyojin props herself up on her sword and gasps that the thing is too strong, her ether already close to running dry. While the porters run for their lives, Hyojin kneels behind them and thinks that all she can do now is hold the monster back long enough for everyone else to get away. Breathing hard, the sword which thinks about what she can do in a fight like this, when her strength alone is not enough. Her mind flashes to Seunghyuk, the knight who used to stand in front of her with that shining sword, the one person she believes could have turned this fight around. Hyojin snaps back to reality, admits that Seunghyuk is no longer here, and clutches the bright potion at her waist instead. Now she tells herself that all she can rely on is her own strength and this strange potion, then lifts the golden liquid to her lips and drains it in one go. The city was bright and calm, and Jiha's small shop sat quietly between the tall buildings, looking like just another normal place in a normal day. The front door swung open and the little bell rang out, warning Jiha that someone strong had just stepped inside. Inside, Jiha almost dropped his basket of potions when the armored woman with black hair strode up to the counter, and even his helper went stiff at the pressure rolling off her. Hyojin planted a hand on the counter and snapped at Jiha, and he forced out a shaky greeting while thinking that this was the one customer who always looked ready to explode. She yanked Jiha closer by his collar, eyes blazing, and demanded to know exactly what kind of potion he had sold her. Other hunters near the door stared and whispered that this was Seo Hyojin, the woman who had wiped out a whole swarm of manstalkers on her own, which only made her grip on Jiha feel heavier. Realizing she was making a scene, Hyojin let go, cleared her throat, and told Jiha she was fine before asking if there was some kind of problem with the potion he had given her. Jiha admitted there was one strange thing, since that potion could restore a huge share of health without using any ether at all, then brightened as he said he had seen the post about her wiping out the aversion monster alone, remembering how she had torn through it in mid. Hyojin slammed her hands on the counter, insisting that it was not her skill but his potion that had made that fight possible, and pushed him to say whether he had made it himself or gotten it from somewhere else. The shopkeeper softens his voice and says he is just happy the potion kept her alive out there. Hyojin turns the vial in her hand and works out the numbers, guessing it boosts ice resistance by around 32% for 40 minutes. And the moment she says it, even she is stunned by how broken that sounds. She compares it to the best ice resistance potion sold anywhere, which barely gives 10% for a quarter of an hour, and realizes this single bottle triples that strength and lasts far longer. When Hyojin presses him about where he found something this strong, Jiha's smile turns stiff, and he can only let out a weak, shaky reply. His thoughts drift straight to the quiet, otherworldly forest, where he calmly picks strange blue herbs into a basket far from any dungeon gate. The system had shown him winter strawberries that grant 20% ice resistance for half an hour, so he filled his basket with them and spent hours brewing until blue light swirled around him and his alchemy skill rose to level 2. Back at the counter, Jiha insists he just found it in a tier 0 dungeon, and Hyojin presses the precious bottles to her chest, eyeing him like she knows he is lying but deciding to hold on to the goods anyway. Hyojin drops the questions and calmly tells Jiha to sell every potion he has, leaving the shopkeeper staring at her in shock. She slaps a thick envelope onto the counter, showing she is ready to pay for everything right now. Jiha waves the envelope and says she is paying way more than the potion's cost, but Hyojin brushes him off, saying this still does not match the value of items like these. With the deal settled, Jiha nervously asks for her name and introduces himself as Yu Jiha. Hearing Hyojin say his name sounds nice, Jiha cannot help letting a small, shy smile slip out. Hyojin glances back with a rare gentle smile, tells Jiha she will see him again and walks out with every potion in hand. The noisy shop fades away, replaced by the quiet glow of Jiha's strange endless forest. He lays out heaps of glowstone kindlegem and a shrinking basket of winter strawberries, thinking the stones are enough for now, but he needs to refill the fruit since Hyojin cleared him out. Sitting in the grass, Jiha studies the glowing piles and marvels that this peaceful forest holds so many rare resources without a single monster in sight. The grass nearby suddenly rustles, cutting through the quiet glow of the forest. Jiha snaps his head toward the sound, wondering what just moved in his supposedly empty forest. He walks carefully between the trees, certain he did not imagine it and sure something is hiding nearby. Jiha's eyes lock on a small shape ahead, his calm curiosity turning into real surprise. Chubby beetle-like creature with huge claws waddles out, and the system calmly labels it a pterodrone, a mythic monster said to be the size of a small car. Jiha frowns, remembering that pterodrones are famous mythic monsters, and wondering why one is standing here like a toy. Watching a whole line of them march past the barrier, he cannot get over how small they are for monsters that should match a car. Jiha presses his hand against the glowing wall and feels solid resistance, watching the tiny beetles rush off somewhere he cannot follow. In another part of the forest, huge devil ants loom in the dark, and the system warns that taking down one only drags in a swarm of its kind. As he studies the devil ant entry, which calls them cargo truck-sized and more deadly than normal hazard monsters, Jiha gulps, realizing both these ants and the pterodrones are tiny compared to what the system claims they should be. One of the tiny pterodrones gets pinned under a devil ant, its claws useless as the giant insect tears into it. All around, devil ants swarm the beetle creatures, slamming them into the ground while the pterodrones squeal and flail. A pair of battered pterodrones tremble on the forest floor, and Jiha finally admits the little beetles are clearly losing this fight. Jiha stares at the one-sided battle, uneasy, and starts wondering if there is any way he can step in for the pterodrones. Bright window pops up, calling this a war between Jiha and his pterodrones against the devil ants and calmly asking if he wants to support his legion, leaving him startled that he can actually intervene. Jiha notices the system calling them his pterodrones, finds that wording strange for a second, then shrugs it off and happily reaches out to choose to help them. The system warns that his side is losing and lays out buffs he can buy with essence, and Jiha studies the list, realizing he cannot swing a weapon for them, but he can still tilt the whole battle with support skills. Jiha opens his hand to reveal 2 golden crystals, realizing this strange currency the system wants is something he already has. Seeing he has exactly 2 crystals, Jiha picks Laborer's Blessing as the strongest choice and pours all his essence into it, golden light swirling around him as he triggers the skill. Down on the forest floor, the pterodrones light up with warm golden energy, their tired eyes sharpening as Jiha's blessing turns the scared little beetles into a real fighting force. One of the pterodrones, glowing with Jiha's blessing, drives its horn down with crushing force. Blue energy surges across the ground, and a devil ant is swept up and torn apart by the raging current. The pterodrones launch themselves into the air, blue trails whipping around them as they crash through the devil ants and tear the swarm apart. The forest fills with a roaring vortex as the last devil ants are flung into the air, and the pterodrones dive through the storm to finish them off. Jiha stares at the battlefield with a huge grin, blown away that his little beetles just wiped out the whole swarm. The caretaker lets out a breath, still stunned, realizing he just watched a full war play out because of one support skill he triggered. Down below, the pterodrones hop and raise their claws in joy, cheering over the scattered devil ant bodies like proud little champions. Jiha crouches beside them with a gentle smile, thanking his brave beetles for guarding the forest like true protectors. As the cheering dies down, Jiha tilts his head, noticing the pterodrones suddenly gathering something at his feet. The pterodrones line up in front of a glittering pile of essence and bright stones, proudly pushing the crystals toward him, and a slow, pleased smile curls across Jiha's lips. One of the pterodrones tilts its head, confused that the caretaker seems ready to refuse the reward they worked so hard to bring him. Jiha watches the system confirm 5 essences and 5 essence stones, then smiles and accepts them, saying the beetles already fought with their lives and this much is more than enough for him. Light ripples across the hexagonal barrier around the forest, and the whole place hums like the sanctuary itself is unlocking something. The caretaker stares ahead in shock as the glowing barrier melts away, realizing the wall that once caged his little forest is completely gone. Jiha peers into the distance and sees the thick fog peeling away, exposing a stretch of dark, untouched forest that had been hidden from him until now. He tightens his fingers around an essence stone, thinking he had planned to drop in for just a short visit. But this new opening clearly needs more than a quick check. With a shaky smile, Jiha admits to himself that going back will have to wait. The forest just got bigger, and now he has a whole new stretch of mystery to handle first. While Hyojin cuts the manstalker into pieces, word of her solo clear explodes across the Hunter network. A lone user scrolls through HunterNet, reading how everyone agrees Hyojin did take down the manstalker, yet also agrees there is no way she managed that kind of monster by herself. She reads one comment wishing Hyojin would just forget Han Seung-hyuk, only for another user to snap back that anyone who lost their partner in a dungeon can miss them as long as they want, and her jaw tightens at how lightly strangers treat that pair. In her mind, the talk about the missing hunter brings up the image of Han Seung-hyuk, the armored man who walked into a dungeon 3 years ago and never came back. The woman slams out a reply, furious that some random user dares to tell others to drop a man who vanished in a gate, as if his life and Hyojin's grief were just gossip. The lights snap on as Choi Chulhyun, the Eternal Flame Guild's top alchemist, walks in and lightly scolds his guildmaster for staring at a bright screen in the dark like some sleepless zombie. Cha Hwa Yeon leans back with a long stretch, claiming the darkness helps her focus, then fixes Chulhyun with a look and asks about the lead she gave him, and he answers that he checked it out in person. Chulhyun explains that the man she pointed him to, Yu Jiha, is officially the lowest rank with no traits at all, and even standing right in front of him, Chulhyun could not sense anything special. Hwa Yeon reasons that if Jiha is that weak, he cannot be the one boosting Hyejin's strength. But Chulhyun points out that the man's stall held something far more interesting and asks if she has heard of an item called Solar Apple. Her eyes widen as Chulhyun explains that Solar Apple is a rare item that slashes ether consumption to a fraction, something even he had only heard about until he saw one sitting in Jiha's shop. Chulhyun explains that Jiha turned the Solar Apple into a potion and sold it for pocket change, which makes no sense if he knows what it is, so he says this can only mean a few things about the guy. The alchemist adds that if Jiha does know the apple's worth, then the only other answer is that Jiha just does not care about money at all. Hwa Yeon decides Jiha must be someone with almost no greed, and liking that idea, she stands up and says she will go meet this strange shop owner herself, treating it as an excuse to get some fresh air. When Choi offers to prepare a car, Hwa Yeon waves it off, saying that kind of treatment feels over the top, even though he quietly reminds her that as a guild master she is basically on that level. And she just smiles, clearly used to walking her own way. Far away in his dream forest, Jiha sits on a log by a small fire, wrapped in the cool glow of the trees as he rests and gathers his thoughts. Jiha shivers, realizing how much colder it gets deeper in the forest, and he leans closer to the blaze, thankful he brought a lighter to keep the chill away. As he walks, Jiha notices that the strange wall of fog that once sealed off the inner forest has vanished. Yet when he studies the trees and paths around him, everything seems nearly unchanged on the surface. Jiha thinks about how he barely stepped past that point before turning back, because even from here the inner forest gives off a heavy, dark feeling that screams at him to stay away. Not wanting to throw himself into something that feels that deadly, Jiha pushes to his feet, brushes off his pants, and decides it is smarter to head back for now. Just as Jiha starts to walk away, he pauses with a puzzled sound, sensing eyes on his back, and a cluster of small horned creatures peeks out from the trees, quietly studying him. The little horned creatures shuffle closer, each hugging a bright blue bundle like it is precious. Jiha reads the floating words and figures out the seeds can drive away fog, then wonders if the creatures are really offering them to him. Among the group, one bigger pterodrone steps forward, its round eyes fixed on Jiha as if waiting for his answer. Looking past them toward the dark, heavy air beyond, Jiha realizes these must be the same pterodrones from before, coming straight out of that ominous place. His eyes widen as the familiar glow of a system window suddenly flashes to life in front of him. The system explains that the pterodrones are begging him to rescue their queen and asks if he will accept. Seeing the leader puff up beside the pile of seeds, Jiha guesses they live around a queen like ants or bees, and that these mist-chasing flower seeds are their payment and plea for him to save her. Jiha smiles, admits he is nervous about going into that dark area, but tells the little guardian that since they protected the forest, he will help their queen after he gets ready for it tomorrow. Later, the pterodrones crowd around bright dishes, munching happily as the calm before their rescue mission settles over the forest. His basic gear ready and a wide buff boosting the group, Jiha points the way as the fired-up pterodrones surge forward, racing to save their queen from the devil ants. Jiha pushes through the bushes and freezes as a huge, twisted cave glowing purple comes into view. He realizes this hive is exactly where that creepy feeling has been leaking out from. Staring up with wide eyes, Jiha understands this monster nest belongs to the devil ants. The hive rises at least 3 meters over him, making him feel tiny in front of it. Inside the misty clearing, rows of devil ants with burning red eyes march out to meet the waiting pterodrones. The ground almost shakes under the weight of both swarms facing off. The devil ants surge forward in a wave of dark energy, claws and mandibles raised as they crash into the pterodrone line. The pterodrones answer with their own roar, bodies shining as they slam into the devil ants. In an instant, the quiet forest turns into a full-on war between the two swarms. From the edge of the fight, Jiha watches the pterodrones slam their foes around with surprising force. He notes with relief that they are holding up far better than during their last clash. Then one pterodrone gets knocked back, its shell scraped and glowing with dark wounds, proving the devil ants can still tear through them. Bright system window pops up, telling Jiha he can step in once by spending a bit of essence. It offers a skill that will smash the winged devil ants out of the air in a single heavy blow. Jiha's eyes widen as he processes the offer, thrown off by how simple and brutal the suggested move sounds. The window calmly repeats that he just needs to slam the flying devil ants down with a strong slap, charging him 3 essence. Jiha stares at the message, wondering if the system really expects him to solve this war with a single giant smack. Jiha stares at the new skill window, sweating as he wonders how a single slap is supposed to fix this whole mess. As he the battlefield, Jiha freezes when he spots a strange purple ant shape moving near the cave wall. The system marks it as a winged devil ant, a flying messenger that links the whole swarm together. The winged devil ant lifts off the ground, racing through the air to carry its message away from the fight. Jiha calls on the one-time skill and brings his hand down like a hammer, smashing the winged devil ant out of the air and cracking the ground beneath it. As the dust clears, Jiha stays crouched with his palm buried in the broken earth, golden eyes shining as he grins, amazed at how easily that one slap wiped the messenger out. The city sky was clear and bright, making the quiet row of buildings look completely normal, with no hint that one of them hid Jiha's bizarre little store. A red-haired hunter stopped under the potion-shaped sign, studying the door as she wondered if this was really the general store that sold the famous solar apple. The hunter thought how harmless the place looked, just another tidy little shop, yet she remembered the black-haired swordswoman saying she caught the manstalker right after coming here, and a sharp smile formed as she decided to uncover whatever secret was hiding inside. Resolve burned in the red-haired hunter's eyes as she made up her mind to dig out the truth behind this strange little store. She grabbed the handle and pulled, only to feel it refuse to budge. The hunter frowned, tugging again as she noticed the wooden sign clearly saying the store was open, and the mismatch instantly made the place feel suspicious. Unable to figure it out, the hunter called down to the man sweeping the courtyard, asking if the general store was open today, and the cleaner looked up in surprise, unsure how to answer. The cleaner said he was pretty sure the young owner had kept the doors shut since yesterday and grumbled that kids these days had no sense of work, while the hunter processed that this place was closed more often than not, just like she had heard about its weekend breaks. Watching the sign sway in the light, the hunter decided it was not just the general store that was odd. The man running it, Jiha, was clearly hiding something big. Back in the forest, Jiha stared at his glowing hand, amazed that a single move could carry this much power. The giant ant crashed to the ground, legs twitching as the mist thinned, and Jiha guessed that single blast of power should be more than enough for this nest. The other ants froze, their red eyes shaking and sweat running down their faces as they realized something far stronger than them had just stepped into their nest. Jiha's beetle squad burst out in a flash of golden light, tiny bodies blazing with power as they rushed straight toward the shaken ants. The glowing beetles dove like a spinning hammer into the swarm, and the ants scattered in tears and panic as the tiny warriors tore through their lines. Jiha dropped onto the grass, head spinning as the little beetles danced around him, and he told himself the job was somehow done safely, though he still wondered if the ant queen was hiding deeper in the nest. As he tried to calm his breathing, Jiha's eyes widened when he sensed his beetles moving on their own again. From the cave mouth, his beetles marched out in neat steps, proudly hauling their bandaged queen on a tiny stretcher, and Jiha could only wonder where they had even found something like that. The beetle queen lay on the cloth, body wrapped in bandages and limbs shaking, but there was still a stubborn spark of life in her tired eyes. She slowly pushed herself upright and lifted one claw, and the gathered beetles crowded close with wet eyes, buzzing with relief at having their queen back. Jiha lowered a finger beside the tiny queen, gently telling her that she had done enough for now and did not need to push her hurt body any further. Jiha leans down with a soft smile, gently patting the tiny queen's bandaged head, just glad she made it through. System window pops up, explaining that the Terradrone Queen wants to swear loyalty, and that signing a contract would make Jiha their sponsor in exchange for items and answering their future requests. Jiha does not even hesitate, agreeing that they can help each other, and the system confirms that the Terradrone Queen and her core have pledged themselves to him so he can back them more directly. Light flares around one beetle as the system names it a Terradrone warrior, and Jiha watches with a grin, thinking it really does look like a proper general now. The fresh Terradrone general beats its wings and shoots forward, eyes burning with the drive of a real commander. Led by their new general, the Terradrone line marches in with piles of shining goods, and Jiha can only sigh that they are bringing way more than he ever asked for again. Sitting in front of the glittering heaps, Jiha thinks he would be more than satisfied with just essence and a bit of ethos stone, then remembers there was something else the Terradrone general handed him. He opens his hand to reveal two strange seeds from the Terradrone general, and the system calmly labels the purple one as a wild grape seed while he wonders what the other could be. The system calls the green one a tree fruit seed, a name that means nothing to Jiha, but he shrugs it off, deciding to plant it anyway and let the forest show him what kind of tree grows from tree fruit. With his heart light and the forest answering his plans, Jiha starts thinking ahead, already picturing a cozy cabin rising here next. In another part of the world, a warped purple gate twisted open, marking the entrance to a fresh dungeon waiting to be raided. A small raid party stepped through the gate, and the man in armor assured his nervous junior that the queen ant should be here, bragging that they would make a fortune if they stripped the nest clean. One of the hunters checked the quest window and stammered that the dungeon had already been cleared, and the leader snapped back in disbelief, since the gate had only just appeared. When the truth sank in, the whole party froze, and the leader could only grit his teeth and curse as their dream payout slipped through their fingers. Standing before the towering ant nest, the hunters peered inside and realized it was completely empty, not a single sign of treasure or prey left behind. The party leader snapped at his junior, reminding him that once a dungeon was cleared it should never open again. Then, still not trusting it, he growled that he would check the place himself. One of the hunters ran his hand along the nest's cracked wall and reported that there were only traces of a past assault here and not a single live ant left. As they moved deeper, the leader and his men suddenly stiffened, their bodies shaking when they spotted a massive palm-shaped mark pressed into the ground. Staring at the print, the leader muttered that only a giant or a monster on that level could leave such destruction, and the thought made his face twist with fear. Unable to shake the dread of whoever had done this, the leader suddenly turned and sprinted through the trees, leaving his stunned party behind as they called out to him. The party leader whipped around, panic all over his face, and yelled for his men to fall back and call the association before whatever made that print came back. The hunters scattered off the massive handprint, stammering that they understood and rushing to report it. Before long, the same chilling image sat open on a laptop far away, drawing a thoughtful hum from the person reviewing it. In a bright corner office, the executive listened as his aide reported that the strange palm print had been found at the devil ant nest, a gate that should have been empty because someone had already cleared it. Kim Hyun-suk folded his hands in front of the laptop and told his aide to keep watching the case and report any new oddities right away, his eyes never leaving the image of that giant hand. Rising from his chair, Kim Hyun-suk frowned to himself, thinking how one bizarre report after another kept landing on his desk lately. Standing at the window with his arms crossed, the Goryeo heir thought back to a past disaster that had scarred him and his group, the terrible incident that still weighed on his mind. Kim Hyun-suk tightened his jaw and silently swore that such a horrible event would never be allowed to happen again. Far away, Ji-hyo just smiled and handed a purchase to a happy customer, completely unaware that powerful people were already moving because of his secret work. In Seoul's area No. 5, life moved along quietly, with neat towers and a bright plaza giving no hint that anything strange was about to land in Ji-hyo's hands. Ji-hyo waited outside the building with a small bundle in his hand, looking like he had all the time in the world, until a familiar voice suddenly called his name and snapped him to attention. His friend came hurrying over, waving the thick book in one hand and greeting him with an easy smile, fussing that he should have gone inside instead of waiting out here. Ji-hyo gave a small, worried smile and tried to slow her down, telling her he was fine and that she did not need to sprint over like that. Heartbeat later she went sprawling across the pavement, exactly like Ji-hyo had expected, while he just sighed as if this was nothing new. Ji-hyo pulled her back to her feet, but Hwang Sunyoung only patted the book in relief, and he could not help thinking that this clumsy woman was somehow South Korea's one and only origami hunter. Hwang Sunyoung laughed about being so out of shape she had forgotten how to walk, and Ji-hyo thought again about how this over-the-top bookworm was the reason the two of them had grown close in the first place. Ji-hyo held out the green bundle, explaining that Jumi had asked him to bring her breakfast, and Sunyoung's eyes brightened at the warm smell as she thanked him, touched that he had waited here just to hand it over. Then Sunyoung seemed to remember something and pushed a heavy, ornate book into Ji-hyo's hands, telling him she wanted him to have it. Sunyoung recalled how the bookstore manager had looked miserable as he hugged a stack of those same books, saying customers only bought them as decoration and kept bringing them back. So she had picked one up on impulse and now was passing it on to Ji-hyo. Ji-hyo laughed weakly as Sunyoung said she only grabbed it because it matched his dusty shop, joking that a book everyone kept returning was kind of creepy. As he held it, the book suddenly glowed and the system told him he had acquired the infinite spellbook, explaining that to write any spell inside, he would need a thunderbird's feather and special ink. Ji-hyo asked if she was sure it was only for show, but Sunyoung just shrugged, saying the pages had been blank and that even when she tried to write in it, nothing happened. Sunyoung added that the manager called it a pure decoration since you could not write in it at all. And Ji-hyo realized that was exactly why the system had just sent him that strange notice. He guessed Sunyoung had never gotten any message from it and awkwardly apologized in advance, saying he would understand if she did not really like such a weird book. Sunyoung shook her head at once and said she loved it, her eyes lighting up as she checked again if he was really giving it to her. Seeing how happy she was, Ji-hyo smiled back and promised he would put the book to good use. Back at his counter, Ji-hyo opened the book and pressed his pencil to the page, trying to write something inside like it was a normal notebook. Nothing appeared on the paper, and the system calmly told him he could not write anything unless he first gathered a thunderbird's feather and several kinds of ink. The system then pulled up an entry on the thunderbird, calling it a colossal bird that only lived in harsh, empty lands and spread wings almost 25 meters across. And Ji-hyo let out a tired breath as he wondered how someone like him was supposed to hunt that thing just for one feather. Ji-hyo leaned over the book and let out a long sigh, already picturing himself never touching that giant bird and just leaving the thing as a fancy desk prop. As his hand rested on the page, warm light rose up and the system calmly granted him a new trait called nice handwriting and a fresh skill, ancient magic, wrapping his whole body in a soft glow. Ji-hyo flexed his fingers but felt no real change, yet he was sure getting a handwriting trait right now was tied to this strange book. So he picked up the pencil again and began to write. The neat letters flowed across the page, laying out facts about the Thunderbird, and the system chimed again as his nice handwriting jumped to level 2. After playing around with his new nice handwriting trait for a while, Ji-hyo tested all kinds of ideas to see what it could actually do. He learned the spellbook still refused to accept any words at all, even with the trait, but every line he wrote on normal paper turned into perfectly clean, pretty writing as he copied the Thunderbird notes. Ji-hyo let out a shy laugh, admitting to himself that for someone whose writing used to be a total mess, this silly trait was actually kind of amazing. Then a strange wave rolled through the air, freezing Ji-hyo in place and wiping the smile from his face as he nervously wondered what just happened. Heart-pounding, Ji-hyo hurried to the entrance and stared wide-eyed as a warped purple gate tore open in front of his store, making him blurt out that a gate was actually opening here. The system laid out a quest for a rank O Grassland Valley, target set as a Thunderbird feather and entry locked to laborers, and Ji-hyo stared at the crackling portal, guessing his new handwriting trait had somehow called it while telling himself the aura felt rough but the low rank meant he just had to slip in, grab the feather and get out fast. Ji-hyo steps out of the portal and just stares, stunned by the bright waterfall and calm forest that looked nothing like a deadly dungeon. Looking at the rainbow mist and quiet pool, Ji-hyo wonders if this gentle valley could really be the home of a giant thunderbird. A sudden rush of wind brushes past him, and Ji-hyo jerks his head around, a bad feeling crawling up his spine. A colossal blue bird wrapped in crackling light dives out of the sky, and Ji-hyo realizes with horror that the real thunderbird is already right on top of him. The monster sweeps over the trees, its wings casting a shadow big enough to swallow the clearing, and Ji-hyo feels like an ant staring up at a moving building. Panic hits him hard as he thinks about the quest, because there is no way a powerless worker like him can take down something that huge. Then instead of diving again, the thunderbird beats its wings and soars off, scattering bright blue feathers as if tossing a casual gift to the tiny human bull. Ji-hyo bends down and scoops up the fallen plumes, staring at the words Thunderbird's feather and almost laughing at how the main quest item just dropped into his hands. With the feather secured, Jia calms down and starts thinking about the spellbook again, realizing he still needs the right ink and that this valley might hold the answer. A small beetle-like helper waddles up, proudly lifting a bottle of bright green herb extract, and it looks like the perfect base for the special ink Jiha had in mind. Jiha lifts the little bottle with a grin, amazed at how quickly the beetle brought exactly what he needed, and he warmly thanks the tiny friend for the help. Jiha's eyes sharpen behind his glasses as he pushes aside his nerves and decides that all the prep work is done. On the mossy rock, the Thunderbird feather, the bright green ink, and the infinite spellbook sit together, ready for Jiha to finally crack the mystery behind it. Sitting under the trees with the heavy book on his lap, Jia grips the feather like a pen and decides he will be the one to uncover what kind of spell this thing can hold. The moment the feather tip scratches the page, golden symbols burst out and coil around Jiha, and he stares up in shock as the infinite spellbook answers his first line with a flood of ancient power. When the light fades, Jiha finds himself standing before the towering world tree, golden sparks drifting over his shoulders as if the spell has dragged him right to its roots. Jiha's jaw drops as bright letters spread across the world tree's trunk, and he realizes in disbelief that the pattern forming in front of him is the ES-72 rune word itself. The magic book blazed with light as strange symbols circled it, and Jiha finally understood that people had once forced these rune words into existence as a quick way to handle ancient spells that were too hard to use as they were. Back in his shop, Jiha read that the world tree had taught pure spells, but people later twisted them into rune words just to make the power easier to use. He frowned, because in all his years as a so-called appraiser, he had never once heard anyone mention rune words at all, which meant someone out there might be quietly trying to use them in secret. Out in the dream forest, Jiha stared up at the world tree as bright golden letters burned across its bark, and his heart skipped when he realized he was looking at real rune words for the first time. Jiha remembered that rune words were only supposed to show up once someone met the right conditions with a spellbook, yet here they were blazing across living wood, and he could not figure out why the tree itself was holding the spell instead of the book. Looking at the shape of the trunk, Jiha suddenly remembered the little branch he had stuck into the ground on his very first visit, and a chill ran through him as he wondered if that tiny sprout had somehow grown into this rune word-covered tree. Jiha shook his head, telling himself there was no way the true world tree was this small, but since he had no idea how long the glowing letters would last, he hurried back to the stone table and began copying them with his feather. As he wrote, a vision of roaring fire filled his mind, and even though it was his first time seeing these runes, he somehow understood that they spoke of ruthless flame and pure destruction. Stroke by stroke, Jiha filled the page with the same burning letters until the last symbol was done, and he pulled back, a bit shaken by how savage and violent the full line of words felt. Blue window popped up, naming his work a scroll of change for destruction that would crank up the crushing power of rune magic. And Jiha lit up as he realized that simply writing rune words into the book could turn them straight into real scrolls. Remembering that a scroll only counted once it was its own piece, Jiha swallowed hard and slowly tore the glowing page from the book, hoping he was not about to ruin something priceless. The ripped sheet curled in on itself, tied with a red band, until a perfect magic scroll rested in his hand, and Jiha could not help staring at it, amazed by how clean and cool the finished thing looked. Jiha stared at the scroll in his hand as light poured out of the open book, and a wild thought hit him that he could just keep making more. The ripped page grew back in a burst of light, the book calmly filling itself with fresh, empty paper. Jiha's lips curled into a grin as he eyed the fat ink bottle, already counting how many scrolls he could crank out if he just kept writing. Bending over the book, Jiha copied the runes again, while thinking that all he knew was it amped up the destruction of rune magic, and that he would need a real magician to see what that actually meant. Back in the real world, Cha Huiyin, the Flame Guild leader, stood in his doorway and calmly checked that the man inside was really Hunter Yu Jiha. Jiha admitted that he was Yu Jiha, watching as the red-haired hunter marched straight up to his counter with a look that said she had been waiting for this. Cha Huiyin slapped her hand on the counter and leaned in, flames almost dancing behind her as she ranted about how impossible he was to catch and how many wasted trips she had made to this empty shop. Jiha rubbed the back of his head with a sheepish grin and explained that because of his own problems, the store ended up closed a lot more than it should be. As Jiha stood there sweating, wondering if she was mad at him, Cha Huiyin coolly decided he looked just as plain as she had heard and told herself it did not matter, since she was really here for the strange items he sold. Cha cleared her throat, let his excuse slide, and pulled out a card from her wallet, ready to get straight to why she had come. Cha Huiyin finally gives her name as the Eternal Flame Guild leader and slides over her card, saying she came because she heard this tiny shop sells special items no one else has. Jiha clutches the card with wide eyes, already feeling like things just got a lot more serious. The flame magician calmly names the exact potions she came for, the solar apple and winter strawberry, like she has been planning this visit for a while. Jiha admits those are his hottest items and, trying to make up for all the wasted trips, promises to throw in some freebies. With that, he hurries to the back shelves, already digging around for stock. As he checks the shelves, Jiha's face stiffens and a bead of sweat rolls down. Something is clearly wrong. He calls out to the guild leader, bracing himself like a clerk about to disappoint a very important customer. Jiha forces the words out and apologizes over and over, admitting that every last bottle of the potions she came for is gone. Even he sounds shocked as he says it, like he can't believe his own store is empty. In his head, Jiha groans as he remembers how the Terradrone trouble and the infinite spellbook kept dragging him away from normal work. He wonders if he even counts as a real shop owner anymore, since this is the first time he has ever let the shelves run dry. Cha Hui-in stands there with a blank look as he bows and apologizes yet again, his regret almost leaking off him. She admits to herself that she cannot even snap at him like this and wonders if he is genuinely kind, just plain slow, or somehow both at once. With a tired sigh, the guild leader says she will just come back tomorrow, even though she had wanted to test the potions in a dungeon run today, and she turns toward the door with heavy steps. As she reaches for the handle, Jia suddenly remembers she called herself the Eternal Flames guild leader and blurts out a question, asking if she is actually a flame magician. When she confirms it, Jia brightens and holds out a rolled-up scroll with both hands, saying that in that case he has something else that suits her perfectly. In the middle of the cramped aisle, Jia explains that the scroll is a flame attribute spell he crafted just yesterday as a test piece, and that he wants her to have it since sending her away with nothing would feel wrong. The flame magician studies the scroll for a moment, then reaches out and accepts it without arguing. Cha Hui-in lifts the scroll and channels her power into it, and bright fire bursts out, swirling around her like a living storm. As she reads the bold line about her flame burning everything, she smiles, clearly pleased by both the spell's strength and its flashy wording. Cha Hui-in heads for the door, saying she will be back tomorrow. Jia bows so low it almost looks like he might fold in half, thanking her and telling her to take care as the new staff blazes warmly at her side. As she steps out, Jia's eyes widen. The staff is shining far brighter than when she first picked it up. Outside, Cha Hui-in walks away with the weapon blazing like a small sun, and Jia wonders if it was always meant to glow that fiercely. Far away, inside a gloomy forest dungeon crawling with webs, a party of hunters finishes off a massive guardian spider. Someone calls out that the sentinel spider is down, and the group starts to push deeper between the dark trees. The leader orders the party to move while keeping their formation tight and to watch their backs. A spider lunges from the shadows, only to be smashed aside by a roaring column of fire that burns a bright path through the undergrowth. As she fought, Hui-in felt something was different. Her power felt stronger than ever before, and her staff was practically overflowing with energy. The flame magician narrows her eyes and leans into her sprint, choosing to ride this sudden boost instead of slowing down. Whatever is happening with her staff, she plans to use it to burn a path straight through the dungeon. She leaps and drives the burning staff down, and the ground erupts in a spray of purple venom and warped mana. The blast clears the hazard in one hit, proving that her fire has jumped to a whole new level. The guild leader lands in a crouch, staff still burning bright as smoke curls off the ground. A nervous hunter rushes up, asking if she is hurt, but Cha Hui-in steadies herself and answers that she is fine, already turning her attention back to the threats ahead. When she looks up, dozens of red eyes blink open in the dark brush around her, far more than the scouting report had promised. Cha Hui-in calmly points out that the numbers are off, knowing this dungeon just became much more dangerous for her party. The hunter behind her gulps and quietly suggests they fall back and reorganize, clearly shaken by the sea of eyes. Without even turning, Cha Hui-in rejects the idea and declares that they will keep going, no matter how many spiders are waiting in the dark. As her party worries she might push herself too far, Cha Hui-in just smiles into the fire. The guild leader feels a rush so strong it borders on unreal and chooses to lean into it. Fire and rune circles stack under her feet as she lifts her staff high, drunk on the strength flooding her body. In this state, Cha Hui-in feels like there is nothing in this dungeon she cannot burn through. The flame magician shouts for everyone to fall back, then swings her staff and lets the power go. A blinding torrent of fire tears forward, wide enough to swallow friend and foe alike. Later, as the rush fades, the guild leader stands quietly and replays that spell in her head, startled by how far it went. A single uneasy thought slips in, hinting that this strength did not come from her alone. Her mind jumps to the simple-looking scroll she got from the general store, the one tied with a plain red string. Cha Hui-in finally admits to herself that this little item is probably what turned her flames into something terrifying. Jiha slides a heavy crate of glowing potions onto the counter, lining everything up for his next customer. Jiha wipes his forehead with his gloved hand, a little worn out but hoping he brewed enough stock to satisfy a top guild leader. Inside the crates, solar apple potions glow warm gold beside cool blue winter strawberry potions, each bottle filled to the brim with power no normal shop should have. He glances at the clock and mutters that all that is left is packing everything up before Cha Hui-in shows, wanting it all ready by the time she walks in. The bell over the door jingles, telling Jiha that his early morning guest has just stepped into the shop. The shop owner turns with a bright smile as Cha Hui-in steps in, explaining that he was just finishing the packing on the potions she ordered yesterday. Cha Hui-in stands there with a calm face, a suited guild officer at her back, and she introduces Jiha by name, making it clear this visit is more official than a simple pickup. Jiha pauses mid-turn, a little taken aback as Hui-in asks to set the potions aside for now and have a proper talk instead. Briefcase snaps open between them, rows of bills shining under the light like treasure laid out just for him. Sitting across from Cha Hui-in and her aide, Jiha stares at the stuffed briefcase and asks what it is for, while they coolly explain that this pile of money is their price for his potions and whatever comes next. Jiha waves his hands in a panic, rushing to say he does like money, but this much being pushed on him out of nowhere has him completely thrown off. Across the counter, Cha Hui-in calmly tells him that the scroll he handed over yesterday showed power far beyond normal, strong enough to beat even top-grade spells. The guild leader admits that walking away with a scroll that broken for free just does not feel fair, And Jiha, sweating but smiling, finally accepts that his infinite spellbook is way more amazing than he first believed. With an easy smile, Cha Hwaein says that if holding cash feels awkward, she can just move the money straight into his account, and tells him to pick whatever method lets him breathe. Even with that kindness, Jiha says he cannot accept the money, thinking of the scroll as nothing more than a late apology and a trial run for an unproven spell, not something worth a fortune. Her aide calls out to the guild leader, but Hwaein presses on, telling Jiha to think about a goose that drops golden eggs and just hands them out, showing a shining bird showering riches over a cheering crowd as she asks what that would really do to those people. Jiha first pictures a silly world where everyone is rich, but that bright thought is wiped out by a darker image of crazed hands tearing at the golden goose, as Hwaein explains that once people hear about free miracles, they stop acting kind and start chasing the source. Hwaein slams her hands on the table and leans in, yelling that in the hunter world, a man who can make items like his is a walking treasure and a target at the same time, and Jiha straightens up fast, stammering that he understands. Once he nods, the guild leader eases back and says she actually has a proposal for that power. Then her eyes burn bright as she asks Jiha if he will bring those golden eggs under the banner of eternal flame. Cha Hwaein admits she sounded harsh before, saying it was because she was worried about Jiha, and adds that she also wanted him to see Eternal Flame as a guild that would never treat him like a tool. She points to the suitcase full of bills, and says she carried the cash herself to prove that her guild can properly reward someone with his kind of power. Jiha thinks about Eternal Flame's giant headquarters, and remembers it as one of the big guilds famous for taking good care of its people, wondering if she really needed to go this far just to prove herself. The guild leader smiles, and says she only wanted him to see that such a famous, well-treated guild is already firmly on his side. She explains that Eternal Flame is full of magicians, but also has many alchemists, proudly pointing out Chulhyun SSI as their chief alchemist and even blurting out how much she loves her own guild. Hwaein adds that beyond the great facilities, there are plenty of skilled alchemists like Chulhyun SSI, so Jiha would get endless chances to study and create together if he joined. She promises that his pay and bonuses will be shaped around whatever he wants and even offers him authority at chief level or higher. Then, a bit shy, asks Hunter Jiha to please join Eternal Flame while he listens with growing pressure. Jiha smiles gently and says he will accept their kindness, and Hwaein and Chulhyun light up at once, already telling people to hurry and get the contract ready. Hwaein freezes mid-celebration, sweat forming as she repeats his words in her head and realizes he might not have meant he was joining at all. She bursts out, asking if he really meant he would only accept their goodwill. And Jiha, still smiling, says the offer is too much for someone like him and that it would be better used on people stronger than he is, while Hwaein's face twists with barely held frustration. Hwaein erupts, flames almost seeming to burst off her as she yells that Jiha is far more capable than he thinks. Chulhyun grabs her shoulder and begs her to calm down, telling her to stop talking like she is the one at fault. Jiha stays calm and explains that he used to be the very lowest rank of hunter, someone with no special traits at all. Remembering that start, he makes it clear he never saw himself as talented. Jiha says the only reason he can make such strange items is because of lucky chances and an amazing friend, not because he is gifted. He admits that this power might vanish one day, and that fear keeps him from believing he can do great things with it. Jiha even laughs a little and admits he is far too attached to this tiny shop to walk away, no matter how shiny the offer is. Hwaein forces a smile at that, trying to accept that his heart is already set. Chulhyun steps in and gently says that Jiha's choice seems firm and that they should stop pushing him. The guild leader lowers her eyes, clearly unhappy but listening to his advice. Trying to ease the weight in the room, Jiha says he will keep her advice in mind and, as payback, will make the potions she reserved a bit more expensive. Down below, a tiny Hwaein figure sighs that anyone hearing this would think she was making him do something shady. Hwaein leans back in her chair and says she will drop it, even if it feels like she just got turned down. She adds that if he ever ends up in real danger later, he is not allowed to regret walking away from her guild. Jiha answers with an easy smile and tells her not to worry, saying that if trouble ever comes for him, he already has something that will warn him first. He is talking about the humming bell, a bright yellow flower that shines with soft light. The system explains that this plant rings out whenever a worker like Jiha is in danger, acting as his own little guardian alarm. Outside, the world looks nothing like the calm shop, with gates tearing open above streets and strange sea creatures crawling where people once relaxed. Ever since those gates showed up, beaches, seas, and even quiet valleys have been overrun, making a normal day in nature almost impossible. Jiha's shoes sink into soft sand as he walks deeper into the dream forest, heading toward a place he has not explored yet. He steps out onto a quiet beach, the waves glittering like glass, and lets out a long breath as the sound of the sea washes the stress out of his head. As he walks along the shore, Jiha laughs to himself, amazed that this place holds not just trees but a whole sea, feeling like he has stumbled into his own private paradise. The memory of Hwaein calling him to join her guild flashes through his mind, and he realizes that just one busy morning at the counter has already left him drained enough to wonder if he is even cut out to be a simple shop owner. He suddenly throws his arms up toward the water and declares that, forget the store, today he is going to heal himself here, stuffing his face and burying himself in books until evening. The waves slide over the sand in slow, steady lines, matching the way the tension from dealing with people all day finally starts to fade from his body. Later, inside a cave lined with stone, a sudden blast of fire erupts near the stack of precious spellbooks, proving that even this peaceful world holds dangers he failed to think about. Jiha stares at the flames with wide eyes, finally accepting that in this world he can be caught off guard at any time, no matter where he hides. Instead of a monster, the uninvited visitor is a small snow-patterned cat curled up on his lap, sleeping so peacefully that Jiha can only sit still and let the quiet warmth sink in. He'd forgotten that he wasn't entirely alone here. A small spotted creature had found him, curling up on his lap to sleep. Jiha freezes at the echoing cry, confused because it sounds like a tiny kitten but carries the weight of a lion or tiger. Holding up his torch, he walks deeper into the cave, trying to figure out what kind of creature could make a sound like that. He brushes his hand over the humming bellflowers and relaxes when they stay quiet, taking that as a sign there is no real danger. When the Terradrone buzzes into view, Jiha realizes the little scout must be tracking the source of the sound for him. The strange cry grows closer with every step. Jiha sprints through the forest, following the Terradrone's lead toward whatever is calling out in the dark. In the tall grass he finally spots it, a tiny snow-patterned cub sprawled on its side and crying weakly, clearly too tired to even stand. Cradling the sleeping cub in his arms, Jiha admits he got so caught up in saving it that he almost forgot about his little helpers. Then he spots the Terradrones proudly hauling over a massive fish, as if they had already decided to handle the cub's meals for him. Jiha reaches out and gently rubs the Terradrone's head, telling the little worker how proud he is of them. He promises that next time he visits the forest, he will bring plenty of tasty food as a proper reward. Back by the fire, the fish is picked clean and the empty potion bottle lies on the ground while the cub sleeps soundly on Jiha's lap. He lets out a breath of relief, glad the medicine took hold, since the poor thing had been shaking nonstop not long ago. Staring into the dark, Jiha admits he is suddenly curious, since even after wandering this dream forest he has never once run into normal animals here. His hand moves slowly over the cub's soft head, as he wonders where in the world a creature like this could have come from inside his dream forest. The cub's eyes pop open at his touch, and it lifts its head with a small, curious cry, finally meeting Jiha's gaze for the first time. Jiha flinches at the tiny cry and leans closer to the fire, worried he woke the cub up. Hearing the soft meow again, he turns his head, already apologizing in his mind for bothering it. The little snow cub curls up on his lap, purring as Jiha strokes its head. It lets out another sweet meow, and his heart just about explodes from how cute it is. Jiha lifts the cub high and twirls around, laughing as it snuggles into his arms. He wonders if this is what people mean when they brag that a pet picked them as its person. Once he calms down a bit, Jiha starts mumbling about names, trying out the word actus but already feeling it sounds too stiff for something this adorable. Looking at its tiger-like spots, Jiha decides to call the little one Bayam, a name that fits far better on his tongue. He grins as he says it, already treating Bayam like family. Jiha gently offers Bayam a place by his side if it has nowhere else to return to. The cub answers with a lively meow, as if it has already agreed to follow him. Later at the shop, the young clerk stares at Bayam with heart-shaped eyes, barely able to handle how cute the snow cub looks in front of her. Holding Bayam on the counter, Jiha tells the curious hunters that he found this snow leopard cub inside a dungeon and brought it back because it seemed all alone. He adds that its name is Bayam, and the cub beams, soaking up the attention. The clerk leans in with a hopeful smile and asks Jiha if she can try petting Bayam, lifting her hand toward the cub's soft fur. As her fingers get close, Bayam's eyes sharpen and the cub lashes out with a quick swipe, making her yank her hand back with a sting. It seems this shy little tiger only has room in its heart for Jiha. The clerk laughs weakly that her hand is fine, even if her heart stings a bit. Jiha bows his head and blames it on Bayam being shy, trying to calm her down while the cub sits there acting innocent. Jiha gently tells Bayam not to lash out like that, even as the cub snuggles into him with a soft cry. He admits to himself that Bayam only shows this side to him and is prickly with everyone else, so maybe keeping it in a busy store is a bad idea. Even knowing that, Jiha cannot help grinning as he thinks about how much he wants to brag about Bayam's cuteness to everyone. The doorbell rings and Hyojin strides in with a drink carrier, and Jiha welcomes her in while Bayam watches from the counter. Hyojin says she just had work nearby and stopped in, starting to ask if Jiha likes coffee. Before she can finish, her gaze drops to the white cub staring back at her from the counter. Hyojin freezes, eyes wide, and stammers as she demands to know what that creature on the counter is. Hardly believing Jiha would keep something like that here. Jiha explains that the cub's name is Bayam, and yes, it is basically a tiger. Hearing that, Hyojin retreats all the way to the wall, clutching the coat rack like a shield as she mutters that even she has something she is scared of. Trying to break the tension, Jiha hurriedly pushes the coffee toward her, saying she should have it. Hyojin blinks in surprise and asks if he is really giving it to her, still eyeing Bayam warily. As Bayam pads toward the edge of the counter, Hyojin backs up in a rush and calls out to Jiha, insisting that this wild beast is getting closer to her even while it tilts its head with a harmless little cry. Jiha quickly apologizes, saying he never guessed she would be this scared, and adds that Bayam will be living with him from now on anyway. With that, he coaxes the spotted cub down from the counter, giving Hyojin some breathing room. Jiha's eyes widen as he notices Bayam acting strangely friendly toward Hyojin. He points out that the little tiger is practically begging for her touch, leaving Hyojin staring at the smiling cub in disbelief. Hyojin swallows hard and slowly stretches out her hand, forcing herself to at least try petting the cub. Her fingers sink into soft fur and Bayam melts under the touch, purring with a blissful face. Relaxing as she strokes Bayam, Hyojin admits how soft it feels. And Jiha laughs that this so-called tiger is gentle in everything but name before she brings up the rumor about him handing out buff scrolls for free and even drawing the Eternal Flame Guild leader to his tiny shop. Hyojin wonders if Jiha is simply clueless or truly that unambitious, then decides he has just always lived without greed, the kind of person whose presence makes others feel at ease, maybe even the reason she keeps coming back here. Jiha cradles Bayam against his chest, joking about his shirt getting stretched even as he hugs the sleepy cub closer. On the counter, the yellow humming bell flowers start shaking and glowing, buzzing like an alarm. Jiha stiffens as the flowers sway harder, clutching Bayam and muttering that something about the humming bell feels very wrong. A blaring broadcast cuts through the shop, announcing a Type 4 catastrophe warning and ordering everyone in the area to evacuate at once, leaving both Hyojin and Jiha staring toward the source of the alarm. Hyojin snaps into combat mode, yelling for everyone to clear out right now before the catastrophe hits. Jiha stares up at her with wide eyes, clutching Bayam tighter as it finally sinks in that this is no drill. Armored vehicles rumbled through the empty street as soldiers rushed into position, answering the urgent call to secure the city. Jiha clutched Bayam and let the soldiers push the crowd along, telling himself that a Type 4 meant strong hunters were already on the move and that they would handle whatever was coming. In the packed shelter, Jiha knelt down and hugged Bayam close, whispering that they were safe now even as the little tiger let out a worried cry. Jiha's smile faded as a cold feeling crawled up his spine, and he realized he might have been lying when he said everything would be fine. The whole shelter shuddered with a thunderous impact, people dropped to the floor in terror, and Jiha could only clutch Bayam tighter as a child somewhere cried out for their mother. When the shaking slowed, Jiha raised his head toward the ceiling, sweat running down his cheek, while Bayam trembled in his arms, as if sensing that the danger was far from over. The caretaker stroked Bayam's soft head, murmuring that it would be okay until the little tiger's tight body slowly loosened under his hand. Jiha rose to his feet with Bayam in his arms and told himself this was just a scare, nothing more than a small shake in a sturdy shelter. Out in the city, a mass of twisted purple energy gathered around a warped figure, the kind of presence that meant the dungeon had truly broken loose. On the ground, soldiers spread out beside the tanks and aimed at the sky, fully aware that this was no simple low-rank break, but the kind of disaster that could swallow a whole district. Round the twisted purple gate, the army had already formed a ring of steel, tanks and troops locking down the empty street. Orders were clear: evacuate everyone within reach while armored units pushed in to hold the line. A squad of high-ranking hunters stepped forward beside the rifles, the real trump card brought in to end this disaster fast. The leading hunter narrowed his eyes, feeling the air twist as power gathered beyond the gate. He knew the creatures inside were already on their way. The squad leader snapped his radio to his mouth and barked the order to unleash everything they had. Gunfire and tank shells roared down the street, turning the approach to the gate into a storm of light and smoke. The soldiers emptied their magazines without holding back, trying to crush whatever tried to step through. Missiles tore free from their rails and shot into the sky, adding raw explosive power to the desperate push to hold the gate. Fighter jets swept over the city in tight formation, lining up their runs as if this dungeon break were a full-scale war. Watching the sky light up, the strategist calmly judged that this level of firepower should wrap things up before long. He was already planning to disappear once the last stragglers were handled. The strategist ordered the troops to keep every gun locked on the gate itself, leaving the escaped monsters and curse throwing liches to the hunters beside him. The soldier stiffened and agreed, ready to follow his lead. Then the gate twisted, and a huge twisted shape forced its way out, its single red eye burning over rows of teeth. The strategist froze as he realized this was no ordinary boss but a true monstrous being. Snapping out of it, the strategist rushed toward the line and yelled for every gun to lock onto the giant creature at once, treating it as a full emergency. The soldier beside him answered quickly, already moving to pass the order down the line. The officer pressed the radio to his mouth and ordered every unit to fire without holding back. A storm of missiles and shells crashed into the giant creature, turning the street into a sea of fire. The giant brute caught a missile in its teeth and bit down, and the blast shot upward like a burning pillar. As the fireball swelled, the strategist judged that the attacks were finally landing and told the troops to tighten their aim on the disaster-ranked monster, convinced this much force would bring it down. Then the smoke cleared, and the monstrous being strode out laughing, its skin unmarked, as the strategist understood that even all that firepower had not left a single scratch. The disaster-ranked brute swept its burning gaze over the city, feeling out the truly dangerous enemies hiding nearby. The strategist watched the giant body thunder past overhead and frowned, confused that it was not even trying to strike at their line. As he tracked its path through the streets, the strategist's face tightened and he began to say what he dreaded most about where it was heading. Far ahead, the disaster-ranked monster barreled straight toward the domed shelter, proving that its real aim was the crowd of civilians hiding inside. A hunter dropped in front of the shelter in a burst of blue light, calling out that the monster was not getting anywhere near the people inside. The armored hunter dropped in front of the shelter and drove a storm of light blades into the brute, forcing its massive body to skid and crash against the street. She triggered her skill, Powerful Sword Rampage, and the sky turned into a cage of blades that hacked into the monster from every side. Farther down the road, a red-haired mage whipped her staff around, pulling a roaring ring of fire to add her strength to the strike. She hurled the flames forward, a blinding lance of fire racing down the street straight into the monster's path. The blast wrapped the brute in fire, but it just kept pounding forward, and both hunters stared in shock as they saw it never even glance their way. With a furious roar, the disaster-ranked brute gathered red energy around its arm and drove its fist straight toward the shelter. The impact rocked the city as its punch crashed into the shelter's dome, cracking stone and sending chunks of rubble raining down. The swordswoman sprinted toward the shattered dome, blade ready, while the fire mage yelled after Jiha that closing in on that thing was suicide, but there were still people trapped inside. The brute tore straight through the dome wall, glass and steel exploding around it, and its single red eye gleamed as it fixed on the people inside. Inside the shelter, people scattered in panic, but Jiha stood rooted in the middle with the white cat in his arms, staring up at the gap in the dome where their real enemy was forcing its way in. Jiha stared up at the broken dome, mind racing, knowing the monster had broken in and that things outside had already gone wrong. But fear locked his body in place. He begged his legs to move, and to his surprise his foot finally lifted from the floor. Instead of fleeing, Jiha's moving legs drove him straight toward the brute, his body twisting into a wild kick right into the giant's chest. The white cat fixed its blue eyes on the brute, its cute face hardening like it had finally decided to step in. Blinding surge of blue ether burst out, wrapping the brute in spiraling ice and locking its body in place while Jiha was hurled safely away. Jiha sat hard on the frozen floor as the white cat, now wrapped in swirling frost, stepped in front of him like a shield, and the brute stared at it in horror, recognizing Bayam as a lowly demonic being that was anything but weak. Bayam swelled into a massive white tiger, icy breath pouring from his fangs as his roar crashed over the brute, ordering it to get lost. Out on the road, the swordswoman raced toward the shelter and stiffened mid-sprint as an enormous wave of ether washed over her from inside. Realizing the monster inside had been frozen, the swordswoman lunged forward with her blade wreathed in fire, telling the mage to pour everything into a single burning strike. The red-haired mage grinned, already in motion, and dove through a roaring column of fire, hurling a blazing torrent straight toward the trapped brute without needing another word. The swordswoman dropped from above like a comet, both hands locked on her blazing sword as she aimed straight for the frozen brute's chest. She unleashed a fire sword rampant, sending countless flaming blades ripping through the ice prison and carving into the brute while she drove the main strike home. Outside, the brute's stone-like skin split with deep cracks, smoke leaking out as its eyes rolled back and its huge body started to crumble. The swordswoman dropped to one knee with her sword in the pavement, sweat running down her face as hot embers floated around the spot where the brute had fallen. The red-haired mage joined the swordswoman and instead of relaxing, warned her that a massive pool of ether was still churning inside the shelter, so this fight was far from over. Peering through the settling dust, the swordswoman finally spotted Jiha kneeling on the broken floor with the white cat in his arms and blurted out in shock that he was still here. Jiha looked up at the call of his name, cradling Bayam as the cat let out a soft meow, blue ether still curling gently around the two of them in the ruined hall. Rescue workers shouted that the monster was no longer responding and told everyone to focus on the injured. The swordswoman watched the flames and quietly noted that the ether she had felt before was now completely gone. Later, Bayam leaned into Jiha's hand, purring hard as if asking for more praise. Jiha flopped into his chair, still drying his hair, when Bayam hopped onto his lap looking proud. Jiha laughed and told the little partner he did great out there. Bayam stretched out on Jiha's legs, completely relaxed as Jiha stroked his fur. Watching him now, Jiha remembered how furious the cat had been at the monstrous beings and realized he was only this calm because that threat was gone. The worker sat there, towel still on his head, mulling over that term in his mind. Monstrous beings. He grabbed his feather pen and opened the old book, deciding he needed to write everything down before the details faded. After filling the page, he turned to his laptop, ready to post the details about the monstrous being online. Far away, an office worker stared at his monitor as new text suddenly appeared on MirWiki, a site no one had ever managed to change before. He pushed his chair in, eyes locked on the screen, and muttered in disbelief that MirWiki's information was actually changing right in front of him. Back at his desk, Jiha closed the heavy book with a smile, saying he had written enough for now, while Bayam chirped beside him. He was amused that even that untouchable MirWiki had taken his report like it was nothing. In a high-level meeting, the officials went over the attack and admitted their hunters hadn't been the ones to stop the monstrous being, saying the sudden ether explosion was what kept the damage from turning into a full disaster. One analyst pushed back, saying it was too early to believe a human had done it and that the ether wave might just be some strange event. But since every civilian in the shelter had felt that blast, he argued they should have found the source right there among them. Knight in armor brought up the real shocker, pointing out that MirWiki had just updated for the first time ever, and warning the room that this meant something even bigger was on the way. Red-haired hunter calmly laid it out, saying that whoever had scared the monstrous being off was strong enough for their actions to be recorded on MirWiki itself. The analyst said there were two main clues they couldn't ignore, and the whole table went quiet to hear how he would break it down. The knight guessed that the one who drove the monstrous being away had either been hiding among the people in the shelter, or was someone with strange powers that didn't match any known hunter class. The red-haired hunter added the second clue with a grin, reminding them that lots of people had sworn they heard a cat cry out right when the ether exploded. The analyst waved off the cat story like it was nonsense, but then pointed out that the small store owner had been in that same shelter during the blast. As the knight and analyst watched, the red-haired hunter rose from her seat, pointing out that the same store owner kept a cat that looked like a little snow leopard, which suddenly made that shelter story feel a lot less random. Later, the shop bell rang and Jiha looked up with his usual easy smile, greeting the three important visitors as the red-haired hunter stepped inside like she already knew this quiet store was hiding something big. The store owner froze as the three hunters marched straight up to his counter, their steps loud enough to make him nervous. All three hunters slammed their hands on the counter, blurting out that they wanted to see his cat right now. The store owner raised his hands in a panic, stuttering that Bayam would bolt if they kept rushing him like that. Before anyone could calm down, Bayam casually jumped onto the counter, making Jiha spin around in shock. The red-haired hunter jabbed a finger at Bayam, eyes blazing as she called him out like he was a wanted criminal. Bayam only tilted his head and let out a tiny sound, looking more confused than dangerous. The hunters leaned in, baffled, wondering how this sleepy-looking cat could be the same creature tied to a massive ether wave. The red-haired hunter scooped Bayam up without a second thought, while Jiha flailed beside her, begging her to be gentle as the analyst frowned, saying he could not feel a hint of ether from the cat. The analyst stared hard at Bayam, bothered by how someone tied to such a huge explosion could feel this ordinary to him. Fed up with all the poking and lifting, Bayam latched onto the red-haired hunter with a grumpy bite and claw, leaving Jiha wincing at how fast things were going sideways. Bayam slipped out of her arms and strutted along the counter, acting like he had done nothing wrong while the red-haired hunter nursed her bitten arm and was warned that he liked to bite. The armored hunter turned to Jiha and reminded him that he had been inside the shelter during the monstrous being incident. Jiha forced a laugh and said he had heard there was a report about a cat noise right before the monstrous being suddenly ran away, and Bayam let out a small meow against his chest as if to answer. The analyst pushed up his glasses with a tense look, clearly replaying that old report in his head and wondering what it really meant. Bayam suddenly climbed all over Jiha's face, making him flail in pain, and the analyst, watching the mess, quickly claimed the cat report must have been wrong. Once things calmed a bit, the red-haired hunter admitted she wanted to scout Jiha on the spot, but said she would have to hold that thought for another time. She ruffled Bayam's head and said she had no wish to clash with the Eternal Flame Guild over Jiha anyway, since he had already rejected her offer once. With that settled, the analyst turned and headed for the door, while the red-haired hunter rushed after him, asking in surprise if he was already leaving as Jiha watched from behind the counter with Bayam. The armored hunter stayed back and watched them go, listening as the red-haired woman joked that she wanted to see him get turned down just like she had. Her lips parted slightly, as if she had finally decided what she wanted to say about Jiha after watching all of that. The red-haired hunter smiled, brushing her hair back as she promised that this would not be the last time she visited his little shop. Jiha hugged Bayam and answered with an easy grin, telling her she was welcome to drop by whenever she wanted. Later in the quiet of his dream forest, Jiha lay by the fire with Bayam on his lap, frowning as he read about something called the Gehenna continent. The caretaker slowly turned the worn pages, sure he had seen that name in this book before and trying to drag the memory out of his head. As he read the line about a beast with white fur and dark spots called nature's raging fangs, Jiha pictured Bayam wrapped in wild blue power and felt his stomach drop. Jiha jerked upright with the book in his hands, sweat running down his cheek as the thought that his lazy cat might be that monster sank in. With Bayam purring like a heater on his lap, Jiha stared down at him and wondered if this sweet spotted furball was actually a full-on nature god. He scrambled to his feet with the book, eyeing the tiny cat hanging off his leg and muttering that Bayam hardly looked divine, yet everything that had happened around him suddenly fit a little too well. Jiha slammed his palm over the book, deciding that all these hints lining up around Bayam were no simple coincidence. In his mind, the gentle cat warped into the raging beast from the reports, and Jiha remembered how people had talked about a huge ether blast that day, now certain it had been Bayam who unleashed it. Jiha stared down at Bayam sprawled on his lap and half joking and half serious, wondered if he was really looking at a nature god right now. The worker hunter gulped as another thought hit him, wondering if the huge tree in his dream forest was tied to this so-called nature god as well. As Jiha lay back, it suddenly felt like Bayam, the dream tree, and even this strange book were all pieces of one huge plan he had just stepped into. The ancient book burst with green light, as if it had heard his thoughts and was eager to show him the answer. System window unfolded in front of him, listing you Jiha as a special worker class with solid health and vitality, basic essence, and support skills like plant amiability, animal amiability, and low-level alchemy granted under a mysterious blessing. Jiha gaped at the glowing window, stumbling back as he tried to figure out what it even meant to be listed as someone's worker. Curled up in his blanket fort with the TV remote in hand, Jiha listened as the news talked about undead swarming near Jiri sent under an elder lich, in a place the government had already written off a decade ago. On the screen, grim-faced experts argued that the lich's corruption was eating away the fields, that grain stores would run dry, and that leaders were already talking about blasting the whole region, even though it was far too wide to hit cleanly. The commentators ranted that they should have moved sooner and now had no choice but to pour every weapon they had into Jiri-san, while Jiha's thumb hovered over the remote, ready to shut the whole mess off. In the dark living room, with the TV finally silent, Jiha slumped deeper into his blanket and admitted to himself that dealing with a lich was nowhere near as simple as those people made it sound. Moments later, he was back in the dream forest, standing before the towering world tree, and he realized this was the very being that had claimed him as its worker. Jiha spoke to the unseen will of the tree, admitting that it was the one who had dragged him into this strange, beautiful forest between worlds. The young caretaker smiled up at the branches and admitted he had no idea why something this huge had picked a nobody like him, but he decided there had to be a reason and that he would live up to it. Looking up into the glowing leaves, Jiha promised the world tree that he would do everything he could to help it grow and protect this place. Right after his vow, a whirl of purple light twisted open in the clearing, warping the calm air of the forest into something sharp and unstable. The caretaker turned toward the spinning mass of light with a puzzled look, already wondering what new problem or chance his forest was about to throw at him. Jiha felt the air twist in the distance and wondered what on earth was going on inside his peaceful forest. In front of the caretaker, a giant column of purple energy roared up from the ground, twisting the sky like the forest itself was being drilled open. Kneeling in the mist, Jiha stared at the glow and realized that shade of purple looked way too much like the disaster footage from Jiri-san. A twisted voice rolled out of the vortex, spitting out a promise to spread a curse over every living thing it could reach. Jiha froze halfway to his feet, sweat running down his cheek as he tried to process why something inside his own sanctuary was already talking about cursing the world. Out of the storm stepped a robed skeleton clutching a jeweled staff, its empty jaw working as it called for every living thing to be wiped out and forced to bow to some unseen master. Behind the skeletal ruler, ranks of armed skeleton soldiers filled the forest floor, purple flames licking off their bones as they marched like a tide of death toward the living world. As the skeletal mage surged forward on a wave of dark fire, Jiha's mind finally caught up, and he recognized it as an elder lich, the kind of dread-grade monster that even national teams struggled to handle. From his perch on the cliff, the elder lich and its endless line of skeletons looked tiny, almost like toy soldiers, which only made it weirder that the little thing kept screaming about wiping out life and forcing everyone to kneel. Before he could decide whether to laugh or run, a blue window from the system popped up beside Jiha, its lines of light spelling out what this invasion meant for the caretaker of the world tree. The system calmly explained that the elder lich was already rotting nearby lands and would soon touch his sanctuary, then offered a plan to weaken its reach. Jiha did not even hesitate and agreed to hear every method it had. Jiha smiled, but there was a hard edge under it as he admitted to himself that stepping in was not optional anymore. Far below, the elder lich raised its staff, pouring out a crazed promise to erase every living thing and make the rest bow to its unseen master. The skeletal ruler howled into the red clouds, purple power flooding out of its bones as if the whole world already belonged to it. The mass of skeleton soldiers answered with their own harsh cries, hungry for death and ordering everything in their path to drop to its knees. Holding the white cat tight against his chest, Jiha swallowed and admitted that he was looking at a dread-grade monster, the kind that even national teams struggled with. From the cliff edge, the elder lich and its neat little square of skeletons looked so tiny that Jiha caught himself thinking they were almost cute toys marching across his garden. He hugged the cat closer, thinking it would be so much easier to just reach down with Etha and swat the whole group like bugs. Then a memory clicked, and Jiha froze, realizing that simple tricks would not work on something that had already turned itself into a lich. This kind of undead would not stay down unless the object holding its life was broken. So even a giant slap like the one that erased the devil ant would only slow it for a moment. The system finally spelled it out for him. To cut off the elder lich's reach, he had to find and destroy its hidden life source, then wash the tainted land clean. Jiha watched the lich and its neat square of undead below, the ruined castle looming behind them, and he accepted that he had to handle both the monster and the land it had ruined. As Jiha hugged the white cat, something in the distance made him blink and lean forward, like he was suddenly not sure what he was looking at. His gaze locked onto the battered stone castle, and a nagging feeling hit him that he had seen this exact place before. Then the torn blue banner came into view, and he remembered at once. That emblem belonged to the Estrum kingdom. Jiha's face tightened as he thought that if this really was Estrum land, then those liches down there might once have been its people. He pictured the Estrum kingdom's people twisted into these hollow skeletons, their empty eyes now burning with the lich's power. Jiha rubbed his head with a tired sigh, admitting that whether they were once Estrum citizens or not did not change what needed to be done. His eyes went back to the castle, where sickly mist crawled over the ground, and he focused on the simple truth that this place was rotting the land around it. So Jiha looked up at the flying beast circling above him and decided that if he could not step in himself, he would send something else in his place. His beetle warrior surged out like a brown tide, their flying leader at the front, ready to march straight for the rotten castle. Their charge stopped short when a boulder the size of a house blocked the path, and Jiha noted that only the lone flying Terradrone could even get past it. Not wanting to waste time, Jiha spent his own power to rip the boulder apart, sending chunks of rock sailing over the startled Terradrones. When the system offered to either let the bugs struggle or spend a bit of essence to move the rock at once, Jiha picked the costly option without hesitating. With the road open, Jiha ordered his little soldiers to rush in and track down the Elder Lich's source of power. Terradrones thundered down the valley in a packed swarm, shaking the ground as they stormed toward the undead's land. They crashed into the skeleton ranks, stubby arms swinging blades and hammers as they traded heavy blows with the undead soldiers. The beetle warriors tore through ribcages and skulls like they were nothing, and Jiha could only watch in awe at how easily they were breaking the undead line. From his perch with the white cat in his arms, Jiha looked down at the swarming bugs and admitted they were no longer just pets but a real army. Deep inside the undead ranks, the Elder Lich screeched at the sight of its forces falling and hurriedly ordered every remaining skeleton to guard its treasured tribute box. A violent shockwave ripped across the field, hurling beetles and skeletons alike through the air and tearing their tight formation to pieces. The Elder Lich howled at the tiny invaders, lifting its staff as twisted purple magic flared around it like a storm ready to swallow the world. Dark veins of magic shot out from the Lich and wrapped around the Terradrones, their bodies lighting up with sickly purple as they clenched and screamed in pain. Drunk on its own power, the Lich ordered its minions to wipe out every last living thing, only for a blazing impact to slam into its staff before it could finish the spell. One stout Terradrone crashed straight into the staff, its horn smashing against the crystal and throwing off a shower of sparks that cut the spell short. Far away in his bright grove, Jiha watched the golden light pour from his hand and grinned, knowing Worker's blessing had kicked in at the exact moment his bugs were about to be crushed. Golden light wrapped around the beetle's shell as it dug its feet into the ground, shoving the staff upward and forcing the Elder Lich back step by step. With a sudden twist, the little warrior hooked its horn under the Lich's body and heaved, sending the so-called King of the Dead spinning helplessly through the sky. Before it could recover, a rain of beetles crashed down on the Lich, clamping onto its arms and cloak as it thrashed and spat curses at the World Tree's lowly servants. The Terradrones tightened the circle and slammed their heavy bodies into it again and again until bones snapped, and the Elder Lich's last scream faded under the weight of the swarm. The Elder Lich raged as its bones flew apart, bragging that smashing its undead body would not matter at all. Then the Lich froze, its smugness vanishing as it sensed something that should not be possible. Far inside the chapel, Jiha's little Terradrone stood guard over a chest made of bones, as the system calmly told him it had found the Elder Lich's source. The system warned that the source could only be broken by an evolved Terradrone warrior and demanded 5 essence for the upgrade, and Jiha winced at the cost but agreed anyway. Blinding light poured over the beetle as its shell stretched into gleaming armor and wings, and a new title formed over it: Terradrone Knight. The Terradrone Knight shot across the sky like a golden spear, locking onto the castle where the Lich's source was hidden. Moments later, the Terradrone Knight tore through the stained glass above, diving straight down toward the bone chest as its smaller partner stared up in awe. Out on the field, the Elder Lich's bones splintered and flew off its body, and the so-called King of the Dead suddenly screamed for them to stop. The Terradrone Knight slammed its horn down onto the bone chest, blasting it apart in a burst of light and flying shards. The Elder Lich's form turned cold blue and began to crumble into dust, its final promise of revenge breaking apart along with its body. Across the battlefield, the blue fire rushed over the undead, and one by one their twisted bodies broke apart and vanished into the light. Jiha stood at the cliff's edge, watching the swirling blue haze thin out over the forest as the Lich's curse finally broke. Relief washed over Jiha, and a wide grin spread across his face as he realized the fight was truly over and they had won. Below him, the little worker beetles marched in tight rows, each one hauling a chest or a glowing gem like they were showing off their hard-earned prizes. Jiha knelt beside the glittering pile of chests and coins, warmly thanking his tiny helpers for bringing back far more than he ever expected. As he admired the loot, one brave little beetle stepped forward with a lone chest held over its head, catching Jiha's eye with how serious it looked. The chest snapped open with a burst of light and mist, making it clear this one was hiding something far better than simple coins. Staring into the flood of light, Jiha suddenly noticed that this reward felt far larger and heavier than any chest he had opened before. When the light faded enough to see, Jiha found himself bending over a chest that had grown massive, its inside pouring out golden light that left him almost speechless. Jiha lifted a golden blade-shaped seal set with purple gems, and the system confirmed it was the Estrem Kingdom's royal seal, an unique relic that proved this land once belonged to that lost kingdom, and even raised his mentality while gifting him a trait called Conqueror's Charisma. Jiha studied the ruined castle and the royal seal, thinking whoever once held this power was probably long gone, and that he had no real right to claim it for himself. In the end, the caretaker slid the royal seal into his pack, deciding to hold onto it until he could figure out what to do with it. Back in his forest, Jiha grinned with his shovel ready, agreeing with the system's plan to weaken the Elder Lich by dealing with its life source, and then washing the nearby land clean. Soon he was shoveling chunks of tainted earth into a giant tub, while the little beetles marched up their ladders beside him, turning the plan into real work. Watching the soil crumble into light inside the tub, Jiha wiped his brow and noted that just bringing the filth into the forest was enough to make it fall apart. One of the beetles hurried over with a heavy ink jar, and Jiha realized it wanted him to try writing some kind of scroll to handle the corruption better. He muttered that he could not make a proper scroll without rune words, and right then the world tree lit up with glowing symbols, handing him the missing piece at just the right time. Using the new runes, Jiha penned a harmony scroll that promised to return any land to its original state. And while the phrase sounded perfect, he still had no idea how he was meant to put it into practice. Before he could figure it out, Bayam leaped onto his back, knocking him forward and sending the open spellbook and quill flying as Jiha scrambled to stop the overexcited cat. The book flared with light as the brave beetle planted its feet on the fresh writing, and Jiha grabbed Bayam in a rush, warning that the corruption tied to this magic could still be dangerous even though the harmony scroll was meant to wash the land clean. Bayam lifted his head and let out a sharp cry, clearly upset that Jiha had dragged him off the glowing book while Jiha just lay there laughing at the fuss. The armored beetle stomped down beside the fallen page and loudly claimed the job as its own. Jiha tightened his arms around the wriggling cat, blinking in surprise at how fired up his tiny helper suddenly was. Over the misty mountains, a cold voice rolled out, claiming the entire range as its own territory. Down in a small clearing filled with old bones and a lone stone marker, that same voice promised that anyone who disturbed this quiet place would not leave alive. A nearby temple, 2 men heard the distant threat and brushed it off as the usual rant of a high-grade monster, only to pause when a strange light suddenly flashed over the roof. Deep below, a Lich dressed like a king lifted its staff over a sea of undead soldiers, calling this cursed ground their peaceful land as it gathered power for an invasion. The Lich poured power into a swirling purple gate beside the marker, promising that anyone who dared touch their quiet land would face whatever came through that tier in the air. A massive beetle from the world tree's side tore straight through the purple barrier and dropped into the Lich's domain, leaving the undead ruler staring up in shock as it screamed for the cursed tree's kin to be stopped. Dark energy wrapped around the beetle and the Lich as they clashed, but the guardian forced its way through the spell and drove its huge claw straight toward the skeletal ruler. Bathed in golden light, the beetle barely flinched at the storm of curses around it, laughing to itself that this kind of attack was nothing worth worrying about. Realizing its spells were useless, the Lich ordered every undead under its control to charge, and the beetle answered with a thunderous roar as a tide of skeletons rushed in from all sides. Back in his small shop, Jia stroked Bayam's soft fur and started to greet a visitor, only to jolt as if something from his other world had just tugged at him mid-word. Hearing his voice cut off mid-word, his sister burst out from the back, charging straight toward the counter with worry written all over her face. She hurried to his side, thrusting her phone up as a live news alert about Jiri-san started, telling Jiha to pay attention while he still absent-mindedly stroked Bayam. On the screen, Jiri-san's peaks glowed with towering golden pillars, and the reporter explained that this was the mountain top right now where the Lich army had stood moments before. The anchor reported that every patch of purple land at Jiri-san had turned clean again, and that officials thought all the Liches were wiped out, leaving Jiha staring at the screen, wondering how this was even possible. The broadcast cut to shaky footage of a huge beetle-like creature soaring over the mountains, and the anchor spoke about a strange monster no one had ever seen before appearing in the middle of the chaos. Commentators guessed that the monster was at least disaster grade, maybe even strong enough to ruin whole regions, and Jiha, clutching Bayam a little tighter, could only think in disbelief about why one of his Terra drones was showing up on national news. In a dim office, an analyst calmly stated that the creatures were not just high-tier threats but true mythic-grade monsters, and Hyojin paused in the doorway, clearly realizing this changed everything. Far away, a red-haired woman watched the same report from her couch, forcing a shaky smile as she tried to process that mythic-grade monsters had just shown up inside Korea. Back in the Dream Forest, Jiha loomed over the Terra drone and its tiny followers, his voice low as he called them out for what they had just pulled in the human world. Standing tall with his arms crossed, the caretaker fixed the beetles with a firm stare and told them it was time to talk about exactly what they were allowed to do from now on. Jiha watched the little Terra drone shuffle in panic and told it that it had done nothing wrong, trying to calm it down before asking anything serious. Kneeling by the open scroll, Jiha pointed at the torn page and pressed the Terra drone, asking if it was the one that ripped the scroll and then showed up at Jiri-san. The armored beetle suddenly darted to the side, and Jiha jerked back shocked, thinking it was trying to run away from him. When Jiha looked again, the Terra drone was standing guard over a mound of shining crystals, leaving him blinking in confusion as he realized it had rushed off to bring him treasure. The pile of ether stones and essence blocks lit up the forest floor, easily enough wealth to change a hunter's whole life. Jiha picked up one of the glowing stones, but brushed off the idea of taking a bribe, repeating that what mattered was whether these were really the ones who had appeared at Jiri-san. Watching the Terra drone shrink beside the glittering hall, Jiha read its guilty shuffle and quietly accepted that his guess had been right all along. The caretaker rested his hand on the Terra drone's head and told it he was not angry, only needed to be sure it was really his own creatures who had done all that. Grinning wide, Jiha tapped the little horn and praised the Terra drone for cleansing Jiri-san, treating it like a proud parent cheering on a child. Looking over the 10 ether stones and 10 essence chunks, Jiha muttered that this was way too much and wondered how he was supposed to handle it, then stared at the Elder Lich's ether stone in his hand, knowing that single gem alone was worth millions. The little white beast crawled onto Jiha's shoulder and pawed at the glowing ether stone, crying out like it wanted it. Jiha blinked at the creature and wondered if it just wanted to play with the giant jewel. The beast clung to the stone with both paws, crying even louder until Jiha finally let it take the ether stone from his hands. The white beast hugged the gem and started chewing chunks off it like candy, leaving Jiha stunned that it was actually eating the Elder Lich's ether stone. Watching the beast's body twist with sudden energy, Jiha realized the ether stone might be their main power source, which would explain why the Terra drones had taken it in the first place. Seeing the little beast shine with power, Jiha just laughed inside and chalked it up to nature's gods being beyond common sense. With that settled, he counted his haul and decided it was time to use the 15 essences to raise his stats. Jiha poured some of the essences into his body, golden light wrapping around him as the system raised his strength to 9 and his endurance to 8. Back on the ground, Jiha threw a few light punches and wondered if he really felt stronger, reminding himself that even a worker like him needed at least a bit of strength. As the beast purred under his hand, Jiha decided he did not need to obsess over getting stronger and could be happy with what he had now. Jiha leaned back with a wide smile, gently patting the sleepy beast and feeling genuinely satisfied with his strange life, right until a call came in from the Hunter Management Center asking for Hunter Yu Jiha. Later at the office, Jiha took the call and quickly agreed to join a dungeon latecomer party, his heart beating fast with excitement since he had never been to one before. Around the glowing fountain gate, groups of recovery specialists gathered, their packs stuffed and ready. Seeing this many people called in just to clean up, it hit him that this dungeon had to be huge. Familiar voice called out and Wango waved from the steps with a big grin. Jiha perked up at once, glad he would not be going into this place alone. Walking together toward the gate, Wango said the rumors were true, that it was the first time a dungeon this big had opened. Jiha looked around at the crowd of hunters and felt the scale of it for real. Wango slung an arm around Jiha and joked that maybe small timers like them might finally grab something good. Jiha laughed, thinking they would be lucky just to glimpse whatever the real hunters left behind. Wengo waved it off and said there was always stuff the main hunters could not be bothered to carry out. Jiha's eyes sharpened a bit at that, already thinking about what kind of scraps might be waiting. While they chatted, the sharp click of armored heels cut across the plaza as a lone hunter strode toward the gate, her steps drawing quiet looks from the others. The armored woman with long black hair stepped into the open, and whispers ran through the hunters as they realized Co Hyojin herself had shown up for this raid. Hunters all around stopped what they were doing to stare, some quietly marveling that even wrapped in heavy armor she still looked stunning. Jiha and Wengo turned too, caught up in the sudden buzz around her. Nearby hunters whispered that she had just finished another quest almost by herself, with even high-ranked teammates reduced to spectators. Co Hyojin's eyes shifted at a sudden thought, as if she had just spotted something unexpected. A moment later, Co Hyojin stopped right in front of Jiha, her shadow falling over him. He froze with his hands on his straps, mind racing at why a legend like her would come straight to a nobody worker. Co Hyojin asked Jiha if he was joining the raid late, and he answered that the staff had just called him in as extra help. Around them, other hunters whispered in shock that she had greeted a nobody worker first and wondered who he even was. The bladed witch looked down at Jiha with clear worry, warning him that going in there could be dangerous. Trying to hide how nervous she felt, Co Hyojin scratched her cheek and said she could go in with Jiha, offering to help him if things got rough. Co Hyojin scratched her cheek with a shy smile, clearly nervous about how boldly she had just offered to stick by Jiha inside the dungeon. Facing Jiha, the bladed witch calmly explained that if he entered the dungeon with her party, he would be able to move around freely instead of being treated like baggage. Jiha stared at her, sweat running down his cheek, barely able to process that someone of her level was offering him that kind of treatment. Before Jiha could answer, the other workers rushed over, one calling out to Hunter Co and Oxy as if this was their big chance to tag along. Surrounded by eager faces, Co Hyojin told the group they could form their own team, and even promised to hand over full control of the dungeon if that was what they wanted. With her eyes gently closed, the hunter said she did not need any authority over the dungeon at all, as if that kind of power meant nothing to her. Then she turned back to Jiha with an easy smile and told him it was time to head in, leaving him to stammer out a quick agreement as the others watched in surprise. A little later, the two of them walked side by side through a bright, green forest, chatting about how dungeons like this hid rare plants that most hunters never even noticed. When the bladed witch lightly suggested they head deeper into the dungeon, Jiha's shoulders twitched, and he quickly asked her to hold on for a moment. Jiha shifted his pack, and a tiny white creature popped its head out, making Hyojin's eyes sparkle as she reached toward it, thrilled that Bayam had come along and gushing over how cute it was. Hyojin quickly grabs Jiha's hand and pulls it back, warning him that Bayam hates having his front paws held. Bayam just squints and turns his head with a smug little face, and Hyojin stands there pouting while Jiha laughs and pokes the cat's cheek. The bladed witch puffs out her cheeks, clearly annoyed that even a cat dares to act high and mighty with her. Bayam suddenly starts squirming and crying out, and Jiha hurries to set him down while Hyojin pauses mid-step to see what the fuss is about. Once his paws hit the grass, Bayam pads forward with a long, easy stride, and Hyojin crouches beside him, noting that Jiha must be feeding him something good because the little guy has gotten a lot bigger. Jiha strokes Bayam's head, and the big cat leans into his hand with a pleased look, while Jiha admits that of course his food is expensive. He even thinks of one example, a single ether stone worth a full billion one that Bayam happily crunches on like a snack. With a light smile, Hyojin tells Jiha it is time to get moving, joking that Bayam looks ready as well, while the cat stares off at something only he seems to notice. As they stroll under the glowing canopy with Bayam trotting between them, Hyojin suddenly asks Jiha if he watched the news the day before. When Jiha asks what she means, Hyojin explains that the reports were about a mythical level monster called Terradrone, and the name alone makes him stiffen. Hyojin goes on to say that hunters even found signs of giants in the Busan Devil Ant Dungeon, reminding Jiha that this place is way above normal danger. Jiha pictures a hand as big as a whole building and quietly repeats the dungeon's name, feeling a chill at the thought of something that huge moving around down there. Hyojin explains that just one giant hand was enough to scrap the whole raid, and people now rank that unknown giant at mythical level. Jiha forces a smile, thinking to himself that the so-called giant everyone fears is actually him. Jiha had already guessed it, but this news seals it for him. The tiny world he manages and the Busan Devil Ant Dungeon are two sides of the same place. As that clicks in his head, Bayam drops low and growls, sensing trouble ahead. Jiha snaps out of his thoughts when he sees Bayam bristling and calls out to the big cat, asking what has him so on edge. The bladed witch feels the same threat and tells Jiha to move back as she pulls her sword free, eyes locked on the trees ahead. She steps in front of Jiha and Bayam, sword raised and cape flowing, while Jiha stiffens behind her and Bayam stalks forward, ready to pounce at whatever shows itself. Strange winds twist the forest in front of them, turning bright trees into a warped purple haze, and Hyojin edges forward with her sword ready. As the air thickens, she realizes this warped path feels eerily familiar. Twisted tree things with glaring eyes and gaping maws stir in the darkness, and a massive carnivorous plant rises among them, its tongue and teeth slick as it turns toward Noop. Jiha nervously calls out to Hyojin, but her gaze is fixed on the ground as old memories rush back. She recognizes the twisted earth beneath her feet and admits this is the spot where Seunghyuk vanished, turning the fight ahead into something deeply personal. Jiha stares into the twisted trees, standing at the very spot where the top-rank hunter vanished, a place rated so deadly that even elite raids avoid it. The huge plant monster digs its roots into the ground, power building under it, while Hyojin calmly mixes a bright red potion, already planning how to bring this thing down. The bladed witch brushes her fingers under her chin, fire-like sparks rising around her as she settles on what she has to do here. Hyojin raises her glowing sword and orders Jiha to sprint for the dungeon entrance once the monsters move, taking full responsibility for holding this cursed place alone. Jiha hurries after her, arguing that this place is crawling with high-class monsters and that even someone like Hyojin should not fight them all at once. But his words trail off as something catches his eye. Blue energy whirls up around Bayam's paws as the big cat answers the threat in his own way. The white cat's body glows with swirling blue light, every muscle tight as he lines up his first strike. Bayam rockets past them in a streak of blue, forcing Jiha to shout his name as the reckless cat dives straight toward the mass of monsters. Jiha's face drains of color as he watches Bayam rush ahead, dread twisting in his stomach at what might happen next. The big cat crashes into the lunging plant beast, blue force carving through its maw as he throws everything into that first hit. The Venus human trap is blown away, its twig legs flailing as Bayam's charge hurls it across the forest floor. Hyojin and Jiha stare at the wrecked plant, stunned that Bayam flattened a high-class monster in a single rush. The big white cat pads back toward them, his steps slow and relaxed like nothing special just happened. Jiha drops to one knee beside Bayam, reaching out to him while Hyojin watches, still gripping her sword in case the danger is not over. Bayam tilts his head and lets out a bright little cry, blue eyes shining, as if he is asking whether he did a good job. The cat nudges something into Jiha's palm, a smooth brown pod that he must have torn from the plant's body, while Hyojin looks on curiously. Jiha studies the pod and asks if Bayam brought it so he can plant it, already thinking about what kind of strange crop it might grow into. The bladed witch looks around the bright forest and explains that the Venus human trap actually ran off instead of fighting to the end, something she has never heard of before. With Bayam hugged tight against his chest, Jiha turns toward the shadowy path ahead as they both sense that the strange plant is only part of a bigger problem. Hyojin meets Jiha's eyes and calmly tells him to head back with Bayam, making it clear she plans to deal with whatever waits ahead by herself. Hyojin lowers her gaze, eyes shining, and admits she finally found a trace of Seunghyuk, so turning back is not an option for her anymore. Jiha stares at her, realizing just how much this lead means to her and knowing he cannot just leave her to face it alone. Jiha pulls out a bright golden potion, agreeing to head deeper with her and quietly promising himself that he will keep everyone safe. Hyojin admits it will be dangerous and asks if he can really protect them, and Jiha answers with an easy smile, hugging Bayam as if that settles it while the three of them stand together under the trees. With the choice made, Hyojin strides down the dim path while Jiha follows behind with Bayam draped over his shoulders, the warm dungeon light slowly fading into a deeper, uneasy glow around them. Partway down the path, Hyojin lifts a hand to halt him, and Jiha stops mid-step while Bayam naps on his shoulders, sensing that she has noticed something off ahead. The bladed witch points through the golden trees and asks Jiha to look, her tone turning sharp as both he and Bayam follow her finger toward the depths of the forest. Ahead of them, a rough cave mouth glows with an eerie golden light that spills out across the forest floor, marking it as the clear source of whatever is warping this dungeon. Jiha watches the glowing entrance and quietly hopes the truth about Seunghyuk waits inside, while Bayam lets out a low growl on his shoulders, warning that whatever lies in that cave will not welcome them kindly. They stop at the cave mouth, bathed in warm golden light, knowing that once they step inside, there is no turning back from whatever twisted this dungeon. As he studies the glowing stone above, Jiha realizes the strange erosion that warped the forest did not start inside this cave at all. He lifts the torch higher and walks in anyway, letting the shower of sparks drive back the dark as he heads deeper. Deeper inside, Hyojin suddenly points at the wall and calls Jiha over, her voice tight as if she has just found proof that this place saw a real fight. She sweeps fire along the stone, and dark streaks show up on the wall, clear traces of blood that say someone was badly hurt but still forced their way through. Jiha swallows hard and urges that they move faster, and Hyojin nods, both of them suddenly aware that every minute might matter for whoever left those marks. Side by side, Jiha, Hyojin, and Bayam push deeper into the tunnel, their shadows stretching long behind them as the air grows colder and more still. Hyojin's eyes go wide as she spots something on the ground ahead, a shape she knows far too well, and a startled cry slips out before she can stop it. An ornate sword and a cracked, stained chest plate slam against the stone, proof that a top hunter was pushed past his limit right here. Hyojin drops to her knees beside the ruined armor, choking out Seunghyuk's name as she stares at the stains, while Jiha stands frozen behind her, realizing this might be all that is left of the man she has been chasing. Hyojin clings to the ruined chest plate like it is the last piece of Seunghyuk she has left, her breath coming in sharp gasps. Jiha stands over her, torn between giving her space and dragging her away from this place before it crushes her. Jiha drops to his knees beside her and gently grabs her shoulder, telling Hyojin to breathe and calm down before she loses herself. The flames nearby throw wild light over the cave, making the empty armor feel even more like a ghost. The caretaker meets her eyes and points out that all the blood they saw was on the way in, not on the way back. He reasons that Seunghyuk must have treated his wounds here and then left on his own feet. Hyojin chokes back another sob and repeats his words, almost like she is testing them, then nods hard and says that has to be what happened. She wipes her face, clinging to that tiny thread of hope instead of the worst picture in her head. Their small white partner pads over and presses its head against Hyojin's leg, as if telling her she is not alone. The simple touch helps ground her more than any words. Jiha looks up startled as he notices the little creature acting oddly focused on Hyejin's chest plate. A thought clicks in his mind that this might not just be simple comfort. The tiny beast suddenly reaches into the cracked armor and pulls out something that flares with green light, making both hunters stare. Jiha leans closer, realizing there was more hidden here than just broken gear. Familiar system window pops up, labeling the glowing orb as a symbiote egg, while the creature proudly drops it into Jiha's hands. Jiha's mind races, knowing he has heard of symbiotes before and that this kind of egg is anything but normal loot. Staring at the egg, Jiha admits to himself that he has definitely heard of symbiotes somewhere, but cannot place the details. He decides to keep it safe for now and dig up proper information once they get out of this cave alive. The little beast suddenly chomps down on Jiha's arm, making him yelp and nearly drop the egg. Then it puffs up with a smug look, as if it just did something clever and is waiting for someone to say it did a good job. Jiha laughs it off and warmly praises Bayam, rubbing its head like it just saved the whole raid. With the torchlight dancing in his eyes, Jiha agrees that the signs all point to Han Seung-hyuk still being alive. Hyejin wipes the last of her tears and quietly swears that she will track him down herself. Now that she has something to hold on to, Hyejin suggests they head back instead of clinging to the cave any longer. Outside under the trees, Hyejin gives Jiha a deep thanks for everything today, while he awkwardly insists he barely did anything. Hyejin hugs her cracked chest plate and tells him that without his help, they never would have found Seung-hyuk's trail. She laughs for real this time and admits that whenever she is with Jiha, good fortune keeps landing in her lap. Jiha scratches the back of his head, clearly flustered, and stammers that he never thought of himself as anyone's lucky star. Hyejin's smile softens as she tells Jiha he can reach out to her whenever he needs a blade on his side. She grips his hand and makes him promise he will not hesitate to call, and Jiha nods quickly, agreeing while Bayam grumbles between them like a jealous mascot. Bayam bares his tiny fangs at Hyejin, acting like a fierce guardian, while Jiha keeps a careful grip on the squirming furball. Hyejin just laughs, rubbing Bayam's head and thanking him, while the little guy puffs his cheeks and pretends he is not enjoying the attention at all. Jiha smiles and says they should split up here, hugging Bayam a little closer as he mentions he still has to get the spoiled cat his snacks. As they part, Jiha's thoughts jump to his glowing pouch, reminding him there is still something strange he needs to look into. Back at his cluttered shop, Jiha hauls out a massive old book, while Bayam perches on a tower of volumes, watching him with lazy interest. Jiha flips through the heavy pages with a frown, certain he has seen the symbol or item somewhere in his notes before. Bayam straightens up on the wobbling stack like a little king, completely unaware that his weight is pushing the books past their limit. The whole pile gives out at once, and books go flying in every direction, turning Jiha's careful search into a paper storm. Jiha ends up with a book hanging off his head and just laughs, while Bayam pops out of the pile, meowing proudly like he planned the whole thing. Rubbing his forehead with the heavy tome, Jiha sighs that the answer is not in these books after all, and decides he will have to dig it up in that other place instead. Jiha grins at Bayam, resting his hand on the old book, and tells the lazy cat that they will meet again in his dream forest. With the warm light from the book washing over him, Jiha closes his eyes and slips into sleep. The next moment, the dream forest stretches out around him, full of soft light and thick green leaves. Jiha appears under the great tree with Bayam at his feet, stretching his arms wide and marveling at how clean and lively the air feels here. His joy freezes as he looks up, eyes going wide at something he had not seen before. Standing at its base, Jiha stares up at the trunk that now towers like a building, wondering when the world tree became this huge. He reaches up to a low branch and finds it covered in small golden orbs, and the system calmly labels them as fruit from the world tree, hinting at how valuable they must be. Turning the warm fruit in his hand, Jiha repeats the name in awe and finally accepts that his sapling really is the true world tree, now loaded with miracle fruit. Before he can plan what to do with the harvest, a light tapping sound at his feet makes Jiha pause and glance down. He finds a line of tiny beetle-like symbiotes gathered in front of him, the leader bouncing forward with a bright greeting as if they had been waiting for him to return. Jiha sits under the huge trunk with Bayam at his side, looking down at the tiny beetle army. He tells them he has something to show them, and every little helmeted head turns up, waiting for their caretaker's orders. Jiha holds out a round, glowing fruit in his palm and asks if they know what it is. His eyes shine because this little thing can change their whole nest. The Pterodrone knight stiffens, cheeks puffed out as it tries to guess, clearly nervous about getting it wrong in front of its lord. Jiha just laughs softly and says the little knight is right on track, then asks if it is ready for special job. The system pops up a message, saying the Pterodrone knight is willing to hatch the symbiote egg and asking Jiha if he accepts. Jiha accepts without a hint of doubt and places the shining egg into the knight's claws. The tiny warrior cradles it like sacred treasure, bathed in soft green light. With the egg in its grasp, the Pterodrone knight shouts a bold order and shoots forward. The rest of the beetles swarm around the glowing orb, pushing together as they haul it toward their nest while Jiha watches, pleased. Sitting with his knees pulled up and Bayam at his side, Jiha watches the beetles vanish into their tunnel with the egg. He rests his chin on his hand, amused at how reliable his little workers have become. Deep inside the nest, a beetle leader lounges on a carved seat while workers march in a neat line, arms full of glowing blocks. The whole chamber shines warm gold, like they are building a tiny palace for whatever is about to hatch. Glowing cradle, as if knocking on it to wake whatever is sleeping inside. Inside the bright golden nest, the beetle leader hangs under a giant mushroom, proudly lifting the symbiote egg while rows of workers line up like soldiers beneath it. They lay the egg on a mountain of golden crystals, bathing it in light like they are pouring pure energy into its shell. The Pterodro Knight curls around the egg on the crystal bed, clutching it close as golden light rises in waves, starting the hatching ritual for real. Back under the world tree, Gia sits on the grass and kneads Bayam's soft paws, grinning as the little cat sprawls out in pure bliss. Gia freezes mid-massage, eyes wide, while Bayam jerks upright, both sensing that the air around the tree just changed. Light pours down from the world tree like falling stars, and Gia hugs Bayam close, trying to figure out why his peaceful forest suddenly feels so charged. He stares at the trunk as a long line of tiny creatures marches upward in a neat curve, like the tree itself just called them to climb. The living chain winds higher and higher along the trunk, and Jiha can only gape from below, stunned by how many have answered the call. Bathed in blinding gold, a huge butterfly-shaped symbiote rises with its wings spread wide, and the beetles swirl around it like loyal soldiers greeting their new ruler. The beetle symbiotes lift off all at once, streaming upward through the golden glow like they are racing to meet their new ruler. Jiha hugs Bayam tighter and stares up through the falling light, wondering if the strange being in the sky is really a symbiote. High above, the butterfly symbiote spreads its bright wings wide, soaking in the light like it owns the whole sky. Golden energy pours out in waves, washing over the treetops until the whole forest glows. The butterfly hovers in front of the world tree, pouring light into its trunk as Jiha stands below, feeling the whole sanctuary shift around him. The sky clears to a soft blue over the fresh green canopy, and the air feels cleaner than ever. System announces that a whole group of sleeping symbiotes has woken up and that the world tree has finally begun to heal, and Jiha can only stare up with a wide, excited grin. Jiha and Bayam stand side by side at the roots, watching as the world tree blazes with fresh light, its branches humming with new life.